When Hajime and his party entered the guild, naturally the adventurers turned their gazes toward them. At first, because it was just three unknown people, they only paid a little attention to them. But when their gazes turned toward Yue and Shia, the curiosity in their eyes increased. There were those who, raised voices of admiration. There were those who stared blankly in admiration just like the guard, and then there were those that were beaten by their girlfriends. It was just like adventurers to not stop at a slap. It was a favorable template. Even though there were some people that tried to mess with them, it seemed that they logically held back and simply observed. Because there was no need to keep standing still, Hajime happily went toward the counter. In the counter was a charming, smiling auntie. Her build was good. Her width about twice Yue's. Apparently a beautiful woman as a receptionist was just a fantasy. It was like how the real and professional maids on Earth were aunties. No matter which world you're in, the harsh reality is the same. By the way, Hajime was just normal. He didn't expect to see a beautiful woman as the receptionist. If he said he didn't, then he didn't. That's why Hajime wanted Yue and Shia to stop their icy glares. From a little while ago, their glares had been pierced into him. Maybe because she knew what was going on in the mind of Hajime and his party, the auntie kept giving them a charming smile.
Even though you have a flower in both hands, is that still insufficient? It is regrettable that I am not a beautiful receptionist.
The auntie probably didn't use special magic for mind reading. Hajime, with twitching cheeks, was somehow able to give an answer. No, I have never thought about that.
Ha 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 ha! Are you underestimating a woman's intuition? I am simply able to understand a man's simplicity. Don't try to avert your eyes too much, it will reduce your credibility, you know.
I am deeply impressed. Hajime's answer was, "Oh my, to be old and suddenly giving out a sermon. Because it was our first meeting. Can you forgive me?" An unapology-like apology to the auntie. After all, it's not like he hated her. The adventurers who were eating took a peek at Hajime while saying, he also got preached to by the auntie. It seemed the adventurers were behaving because of this auntie.
Well then, once more, welcome to Adventurer Guild, Brooks Branch. What is your business?
I want to know where to sell raw materials.
Selling raw materials, it is. Then, can you show me your status plate first?
NN? Is it necessary to show your status plate for purchasing something? To Hajime's question, the auntie was, "Oh my," showing that kind of expression.
Aren't you an adventurer? Certainly the status plate isn't necessary to purchase something, but if you are confirmed as an adventurer, there will be a 10% increase in the price of the things you sell.
I see. Just as Auntie said, there were various privileges as an adventurer. It was because the adventurers were the ones that collected raw materials such as magic stones and recovery medicine that's necessary for everyday lives. Also, it wasn't known when the town would be attacked by demonic beasts, so no amateur tried to collect those raw materials. It was natural to give out privileges corresponding to the dangers.
There are other benefits, such as 1020% discount for hotels and shops associated with the guild, and it's possible to freely use carriages for people with a high rank. What will you do? Do you want to register? The fee is 1,000 ruta.
Ruta is this world's common currency that's used in the northern continent, tortoise. Zagaruta ore is the special ore used to make this currency. The difference in colors are made by mixing it with different minerals using a special method along with the carved seal. Blue, red, yellow, purple, green, white, black, silver, and gold were the colors. From the left, the values are 1, 5, 10, 50, 100, 500, 1,000, 5,000, and 10,000 ruta, respectively. Surprisingly, its value was the same as Japan's. UNIC. Even though it was explained with great effort, I can't register now. I am sorry, I don't have any money at all. Is it possible for me to sell it first? Of course, the first sale value is good as it is.
Don't say that in front of these two cuties. I will help. It's not like it'll inconvenience me, you know.
Auntie was so cool. Hajime decided to accept her goodwill and showed his status plate. He made sure to conceal it this time. It only displayed name, age, sex, and job, although Auntie also asked for Yue and Shia's, but was cut off. Although these two didn't have plates to begin with, it was possible to ask for it. However, their status's numerical value and skills column would be seen by Auntie. Although Hajime wanted to see their statuses, he thought their special magic would be described on the skills column for sure. If these three existences were publicized, it'd only be troublesome, so they decided to put it on hold. New information was written on the returned status plate. There was an occupation column beside the job column. What was written there was adventurer, along with a blue mark at its side. This blue mark was the adventurer's rank. It continued with red, yellow, purple, green, white, black, silver, and gold. You might have noticed it. That's right, adventurer ranks are the same as currency. In other words, blue-ranked adventurers were, your value is only 1 ruta pechoi, or something along that line. It was painful. Surely, the previous guildmaster who thought of this system was someone twisted. By the way, the limitations for someone with a non-combat profession was black. It seems because the black rank barely reached 4 digits, you'd be applauded to make it that far. Someone who reached gold rank would be the object of admiration. You should be able to understand how the colors stand for adventurers now.
If you're a man, then work hard to reach black, okay? Don't show any uncool sides to these girls.
I'll do that. Then, is it okay to sell them now?
No problem. I have the qualifications for appraisal, so show it to me.
It seemed Auntie was not only a receptionist but also able to appraise sold items. She was an excellent auntie. Hajime already took out the raw materials from the treasure box and placed it in a bag beforehand. Those items were demonic beasts' furs, nails, fangs, and magic stones. When the container was put on the counter and the raw materials were seen, Auntie displayed an astonished expression.
These are...
She timidly took it, then ascertained the items inside out. After holding her breath in nervousness, Auntie finally looked up. Then she gave out a sigh and looked at Hajime.
You've brought something unexpected. Aren't these... from the Sea of Trees demonic beasts?
Ah, that's right. Hajime also wanted to remove the template here. That was why the raw materials from Abyss's demonic beasts couldn't be taken out here. If unknown materials were taken out, it'd immediately cause a big commotion. Even though he was hesitating because the raw materials from the Sea of Trees demonic beasts were also unusual, he didn't have any other raw materials, so he sold that. Having seen Auntie's reaction, it was unusual after all. If he took out raw materials from the Abyss, it'd be like, the guild had appeared, sudden raise in rank, the receptionist lady's eyes became hearts. It'd be that kind of template. It was a good thing he didn't do that. That's why Hajime wanted Yu and Shia to stop looking at him with icy glares, because it made his body tremble.
You are also unexpected.
I don't understand what you mean. Even though he had changed, his otaku soul couldn't be erased. Somehow it became like this. Hajime, who pretended to not know anything, looked away from reality.
Because there are a lot of good quality raw materials from the Sea of Trees. Thanks for selling them.
Auntie, even though she didn't know anything, continued to speak. It seemed she was capable of reading the mood. She truly was a pleasant and excellent auntie. Are these unusual after all?
You know, a human's sense of direction would be driven out of control inside the Sea of Trees. Because once you get lost, there would be no second time. It's a place with high risk. That's why no one tries to go there. Although it's possible to buy demi-human slaves to enter it, it's more profitable to sell them at Central. They will sell at a high price, and it'll make it easier to raise one's name.
Auntie took a peek at Shia. She probably guessed that they received Shia's help to go around the Sea of Trees. It seems, thanks to Shia, she didn't become suspicious of the raw materials from the Sea of Trees. After Auntie assessed all of the raw materials, she presented the money. The value of the sold items were 487,000 ruta. It was an excellent amount.
Is this much okay? I think it'll sell for more at Central.
Well, I don't mind this much. Hajime received 51 pieces of the Ruta currency. This money, maybe because of an ore characteristic, was strangely light. That's why it wasn't bothersome to carry more than 50 pieces Ruta currency. After all, if it was a bother, Hajime could just put it inside the treasure box. By the way, I heard from the guardsman that I can get a simple map of this town.
Please wait a moment. Here. This is it. Please refer to it because the recommended inn and stores are written there.
On the given map, there was elaborate useful information and descriptions written with simplicity that made it a wonderful item. He felt it was rather unbelievable for this to be free of charge. Oi oi, is this okay? For such a splendid map to be free of charge? I thought it'd need some money to make something of this level.
I don't mind. I only do it as a hobby. For those that have the job to make it, that's just like a scribble.
Auntie, truly an excellent person. Just why did this person become the receptionist of the guild? Was the level he wanted to rebut? Surely there might be a sublime drama behind it. I see. Well, it helps.
That's a good word. Moreover, because you have money, please just stay here for a while. Although this town's public order isn't bad, there might be some reckless men out there because of these too.
Auntie, who paid attention until the last minute, truly was a good person. Hajime answered, "I'll do that," while grinning, then turned his feet toward the entrance. Yu and Shia followed suit after bowing their head. Some adventurers in the restaurant were sneakily whispering while their eyes were glued to Yu and Shia to the end.
Fumu, in a lot of ways, they are interesting people.
Hajime and his party, more than a map calling it a guidebook, then decided on an inn called Masaka Inn. According to the description, it served delicious food with good security. It also had a bath. The last description was what decided it. Although the price was rather expensive, there were no problems because they had the money for it. Slightly, they thought what followed was that Masaka, on the inn's first floor, there was a dining room filled with some people having their meal. When Hajime and his party entered, gazes were focused on Yua and Shia as promised. They ignored that. When they arrived at the counter-like place, what appeared was a girl around 15 that cheerfully greeted them.
Welcome to Masaka Inn. Today, are you here for lodging? Or are you only here to eat?
Lodging. Although I've seen in the guidebook, is this place as good as described? The girl nodded when Hajime showed Auntie's special map.
It's the introduction from Catherine-san. Yes, it was as written. How many nights do you wish to stay?
Although the girl tried to promptly continue the staying procedure, Hajime was thinking of something else. Hajime was shocked that the auntie's name was Catherine. The girl called out to him with, Mr. Customer? Sorry, only for one night, the one with meals and bath.
Yes, the bath will be 100 ruda per 15 minutes. Currently, it's empty at this time.
The girl showed him the timetable. Because he wanted to enjoy it, he wanted to book the men's and women's side for 2 hours. When he said that, "Hey, for 2 hours," the girl was surprised just like that. It couldn't be helped. Hajime was Japanese after all.
Then, what about the rooms? Although there are double and triple rooms,
The girl looked at Hajime and his party with curiosity. She was in her puberty after all. However, Hajime could feel the other customers who were eating their meals perk their ears up. Although he knew Yue and Shia were beautiful, it looked like they stood out more than he expected. Because there are lots of people they don't know here, Hajime was slightly paralyzed.
Hajime was slightly paralyzed.
The triple room, please. Hajime said that without any hesitation. Their surroundings became noisy and the girl's cheeks were blushing in slight red. However, there was a person who objected Hajime's words.
It's no good. 2 double rooms.
It was Yue, the surrounding customers, especially the males looking toward Hajime with expressions that said, "Serves you right." They interpreted Yue's words as to divide them between men and women. However, Yue's next words put them in despair.
1 for me and Hajime. Shia in the other room. What? What's with that? I don't want to be left out. The triple room is better, you know. It'll be distracting if Sheer was there.
Distracting? What do you mean?
What?
Boo! Don't say that in this place. That's vulgar.
Having heard Yue's words, the men who fell into despair began to turn their eyes, filled with flames of envy, toward Hajime. The inn's girl, with a reddened face, looked alternatively between Hajime and Yue. Hajime, who thought it'd make him ashamed if this keeps up, tried to stop it, but his plan was a little too slow.
Then, you-san, please stay in the other room. Hajime-san and I will stay in the same room.
How then?
Yu's cold and piercing gaze turned toward Shia, who pointed her finger. Because of its power, Shia, who remembered her training days, trembled. Woman's courage, said that, then returned to the gaze while loudly declaring,
Fair. Then I'll give my virginity to Hajime-san.
Silence came. No one, not even one word was said, not even noise was heard. Now everyone in the inn were focused on Hajime and his party and stared at them. From the kitchen, the girls' parrot were ara ara, ma ma, and youth is good, said something along those lines. Yu was swaying with eyes of absolute zero.
Today is your death anniversary.
I won't lose. I will defeat Yue-san and become the main heroine from now on.
I'll show you. No disciples were stronger than their master.
I'll usurp it.
An abnormal pressure gushed out from Yue, and Shia, who was trembling, shouldered her sledgehammer. It was truly pandemonium. Everyone was nervous and gulped in this critical atmosphere.
Hugh?
Heikyu?
The sound of fists hitting the girls came followed by their screams. Yue and Shia, with teary eyes, crouched while covering their heads with both hands. The one who hit the two's heads were, of course, Hajime. Geez, you're troubling everyone, and above all, it shamed me.
Heijime's love is painful.
Jay, just a little more. Just a little more time then. With body strengthening, the pain would be...
You reap what you sow, idiot. Hajime turned his cold gaze toward the two, then returned to face the girl. The girl corrected her posture when Hajime looked at her. I am sorry for the commotion. Triple room, please.
Trey, triple room with this situation. In other words, 3-person? Amazing. Don't tell me booking the bath for 2 hours is also for that? Washing each other's body? Then, doing this and that? How abnormal.
The girl's mind had gone for a trip. The landlady, who couldn't stand it any longer, dragged the girl into the interior. The man, who seemed to be her parent, continued to finish the procedure. When he gave the key, he apologized. I am sorry about my girl. And in his eyes were, you're a man after all, right? I know how you feel. That kind of unwelcomed misunderstanding. Surely he was the type that would say, did you enjoy the night, when tomorrow arrived? Because no matter what he says, it would be misunderstood. Along with the other customers who blankly sent skeptical gazes. With Yu and Shia, who were still crouched on the floor shoulder to shoulder, Hajime ran away straight to the 3rd floor where his room was located. After a while, the stop time moved and it became noisy again downstairs, and Hajime, who felt strangely tired, decided to ignore that. When Yu and Shia entered the room, they moved their bed, while Hajime, who had dived into the bed, already shut down his consciousness. After sleeping for several hours, Hajime was woken up by Yue when it was time for supper. Then the three went down to the dining room. Somehow, the customers who were there when they checked in were still there. For a moment, Hajime felt his cheeks twitch. Then he assumed his calm and sat down on the seat. Immediately, the inn girl from before came as the waitress and said with a reddened face, I am sorry for before. Although she apologized, she couldn't hide the curiosity in her eyes. The food he ordered was delicious, and it was the normal food he finally got to eat after a long time. So he wanted to slowly eat it, but he couldn't help but to secretly sigh. Inside the bath, although the time for male and female were different, Yu and Shia trespassed. Then once again pandemonium was raised. only to be punished by Hajime with hits on the head, and the silhouette of the in-girl could be seen moving around sneakily. When it was found out she was peeping by the landlady, she got spanked on the butt. Even at the time for sleep, Yue and Shia naturally came into Hajime's bed, while his right arm was clung to. Shia, who clung onto his left arm, cried because of the coldness of the artificial arm. He could feel Shia through the pseudo-nerves, especially the direct feeling of that lethal weapon, and it disturbed his mind. When that was discovered, Yue stared closely at him with dead-like eyes. It continued for all night long. The next morning, I vowed, next time I would just order a double room for Yue and me, without any more questioning. It didn't matter if Shia sulked because of it. After all, Yue's silence was not very good for my mental health. After eating breakfast, Hajime handed some money to Yu and Shia to ask them to help buy the necessary items for travel. There's some time until the time for checking out came. So, while Yu and Shia does the errand, he'll finish his tasks inside the room.
What tasks?
Shia honestly questioned him. However, Hajime was, "There is something I wanted to make. Because it was already planned, I am sure it only needs a few hours to finish. Although I seriously thought to finish it last night, somehow I was strangely feeling tired yesterday."
That's so. Yusan, is it okay for me to look for clothes?
No, no problem. I wanted to look around the stalls.
Ah, that's good. Yesterday we only saw it for a moment. After we're done shopping, let's go eat.
While averting their gazes, Yu and Shia began to noisily talk about shopping. Although they knew they were the cause, they didn't want to admit it, so they changed the topic calmly. "You guys? In truth, you're getting along well." Hajime's mutters only go through their ears. Currently, Yue and Shia had gone out to town. Because it was only several hours before noon, they must move as planned. Their objectives were food, groceries, and clothes for Shia, as well as some medicine. Weapons and armor were unnecessary because they have Hajime. The town was already wrapped up in its day-to-day hustle and bustle. The stall keepers vigorously called out to customers. There are housewives and adventurers haggling intensively. There are also food stalls that made you think, isn't it too crowded in the morning, while the smell of burning meat and sauce drifted around. Because tool shops and groceries would be too crowded at this time, these two decided to look for Shia's clothes first. From Auntie Catherine Sand's map, it mentioned the stores for everyday wear, specialty stores for high-class dresses, and the recommended stores for adventurers and travelers. As expected, Catherine Sand was someone with good abilities. She could accomplish anything as long as she wished for it. These two immediately visited a certain shop for adventurers. They decided to buy everyday clothes for when they went back. Inside the shop, as expected of something Catherine-san recommended, there were a lot of items. The quality was good, they were practical and functional. It was a store that wouldn't betray your expectations. However, inside was...
"Oh my, welcome? What lovely girls! To have you coming here, it makes One-san happy. I will surely give a go-odd service."
There was a monster, with a height of 2 meters, cladded with armor made of muscles, face thick with makeup, on top of its bald head, chokan, long hair grew in only one place, and that was made into a 3-neat braid and tied with a pink ribbon. When it moved, its muscles were twitching, and gishimishi sound could be heard from it. With both hands on its cheeks, it twisted its body. Its clothes were... No, it couldn't be said as that. At the very least, gaunt, thick limbs, with a garment that made its stomach muscles completely visible. Yu and Shia stiffened. Shia already passed out, while Yu steeled herself, having seen a monster that surpassed the abyss's demonic beasts.
My oh my? What happened to the two of you? Cute girls shouldn't make that face. Come on, smile, smile.
No matter what, everything was your fault. It was your fault that I couldn't smile.
The grand rebuttal that Yu and Shia were somehow able to resist making. Even though these two have the level of highest potential out of all of humanity, they didn't think they could win against this monster. However, because the monster approached them with a big smile, Yue could not to bear it and inadvertently muttered,
Human?
At that moment, the monster raised an angered voice.
Who could make a legendary class demonic beast run away? As you can see, credibility behind that is 0, or rather it's minus. How could you call me a monster?
I am sorry.
Yu trembled with teary eyes. Shia had long since been chilled in her lower body. After Yue apologized, the monster smiled once again and continued its service.
It's okay. Then, for today, what kind of item do you want to view?
Shia stayed still even now, while Yue steeled herself to look for Shia's clothes. Maybe it was because she already wanted to go home. Shia gripped Yue's skirt and shook both the skirt and her head. However, when smilingly the monster said, "Leave it to me," it carried Shia on its shoulder into the store. At that time, Yue looking at Shia's eyes, the expression of saw a pig that got sold for meat. In conclusion, the monster that was called Manager Christabel-san could be considered a splendid manager. Shia, who was taken inside the store, also realized it. That's why when it offered her the dressing room, she was undeniably grateful. Yue and Shia expressed their gratitude to Manager Christabel. When they did that, they could feel the charm from the manager's smile. It was a woman's virtue.
Well, at first I wondered what might happen to me. But it was an unexpectedly good person. That manager's son.
We can't judge people from their appearances.
Right.
While chatting that way, they wandered around as their destination was the tool shop. However, these two stood out. On their way, when they noticed it, they were already surrounded by 10 men. Most of them looked like adventurers, but among them, there was also someone with an apron from the shop from somewhere. One of the men came forward. Although Yue didn't remember it, this man was one of the adventurers inside the guild when Hajime and his party talked to Catherine.
Your names are Yue-chan and Shia-chan, right?
That's right.
Yue, who didn't know what he wanted, squinted her eyes. Shia, because she was a demi-human, was surprised to be called by Chan. The man who heard Yue answer looked back at the other men behind him and nodded. Yue could see they steeled their minds. The other men also moved forward to the front of Yue or Shia.
Yu-chan, please go out with me.
Shia-chan, become my slave.
In other words, well, something like that. The pickup lines for Yue and Shia were different because Shia was a demi-human. Even though they needed the master's permission to transfer the rights of a slave, they must already know how intimate the relationship between Hajime and his party was from their talk at the inn yesterday. So to persuade Hajime, they must get Shia first, or so they thought. By the way, maybe because the impact from the talk at the inn was too strong, the fact that the slave pact made it so that the slave was unable to oppose its master somehow escaped their minds. If not so, they should have discovered that Shia wasn't a slave. Although the strength of the pact could be lowered, no one actually did that. Well, Yue and Shia, who got confessed to, were...
Shia, the tool shop is over here.
Ah, yes. It's good if we can buy everything at once.
They continued their walk as if nothing had happened.
Wha? Please wait. Your answer? Tell us your answer.
I refuse.
Quo.
Because their attitude seemed to think nothing about it, the man let out a groan. Some men bent their knees and crumbled on the spot. Oars. However, there were also some that didn't give up. That just goes to show how far above normal Yue and Shia's level of beauty was. As a result, it couldn't be helped if they became reckless because of it.
Then I'll make you mine by force.
The reckless man shouted that. Then Jin light came from the other men's eyes. They surrounded the two so they could catch them, then impatiently drew near them. Finally, the man who talked to them first jumped out to catch Yue. When the Japanese see that, they'd surely shout, "Ah, lupin dive," something like that. Yue coldly muttered, "One thing."
Ice coffin.
Immediately, the man was confined inside a coffin of ice, except his head, pulled by gravity, and fell. Gupe was the miserable scream the man who did the lupin dive raised when he reached the ground. The other men knew that ice coffin was classified as advanced water system magic, and were shocked that Yue invoked it just by saying its name. They interpreted it on their own, and in their whispers, she said the incantation beforehand. and the magic circle must be hidden inside her clothes, or something along those lines could be heard. Yu was walking up determined to the man who was wrapped in ice, although surrounding them was a shocked air. Having seen Yu's prowess, there was already the second pin among them. That's why Yu showed them a warning. Yu melted the ice that wrapped the man little by little. The man was glad because he might get out of it. In addition, he watched Yu with feverish eyes.
Why, Yua-chan? I am sorry to do it suddenly, but I truly think of you as…
Even though the man wrapped in ice tried to get his feelings across, his words stopped. If you ask why, it was because he noticed the small place where the ice melted. It was…
Yu-chan? Why, is it only the part between my groin?
That's right. Yue only melted the ice between the man's groin. The man was still perfectly restrained. Because he felt something bad would happen, the man with cold sweat said, "Surely that can't be, right?" "Right, right." When he saw Yue's expression, Yue curved her mouth slightly to the man.
Aim and shoot.
Then, volleys of gravel continuously hit the man's nether region.
Ah, stop already, mother.
The man's scream resounded in the morning street. The sound of Mario collecting coins could be heard from the man's groin that was continuously aimed at. Surely the inside was like something that received a boxer's Dempsey roll. The surrounding men, not only the one that surrounded them, but also the unrelated onlookers and stall-keepers nearby, all crumbled while covering their groin with both hands. The barrage that seemed to continue for eternity finally stopped in consideration of the man who already lost his consciousness. Even though it was impossible to lose consciousness with only one blow, it could be done by accumulated damage along with wind magic. As if it was a miracle, Yu Hu-Fu blew her forefinger, left her words as a parting gift.
Good. You've become Otomen, a maiden.
On this day, a man died and became the second Christabel, and Maribel Chan was born. This person, under training from manager Christabel, became the manager of the branch store, and although it was able to increase its fame, that's a story for another time. Yue got her second name, Crotch Smasher. That name caused uproars in the Adventurer Guild and even reached the capital. It was capable of making male adventurers shudder, but this was also a story for another time. Yue and Xia ignored the frightened gazes of men and continued their shopping. On their way, they could hear girls say, "Yue wan-sama," but ignored that and continued their shopping. When Yue and Xia went back to the inn, Hajime already finished his work. "Good work. Somehow there seems to be a fuss inside town. Did something happen?" It seemed he noticed their commotion.
There is no problem.
A-, that's right.
To see a monster as the dress store manager and had heaven call for a man, the two said it was nothing. Although Hajime felt a little suspicious of them, he shrugged his shoulders and let it go. "Did you buy all the necessary things?"
Nin, don't worry.
That's right. There's also a lot of food, but it was okay. It truly is convenient to have treasure box.
For shopping, Hajime entrusted the treasure box to them. Having seen Xia look at the ring enviously, Hajime could only reveal a wry smile. With his current proficiency, he was still unable to make treasure box. It surely would be convenient. When he is capable of crafting it, he would definitely give it to them. "Well then, Xia, this is yours." While saying that, Hajime passed Xia a cylindrical object with 40 centimeters in diameter and 50 centimeters in length, a silver cylindrical object with a handle installed on its side. Xia, who received the gift from Hajime, was immediately confused when she felt the weight and activated her body's strengthening. Generous. Just a COVID.
Whoa! What is this? It's really heavy.
Well, it's because that's your new sledgehammer. It is good for it to be heavy.
This is…
Shia's doubt was justifiable. The cylindrical object did not look like a hammer at all, and the handle was also too short. No matter what was said, it was unbalanced. Ah, that's the standby state. For now, try to pour some magic into it.
Like this? K?
As he said, she poured magic into the hammer-like thing. Kashun, kashun, sounds of machinery emitted from the hammer, and the handle extended. It became the right length for a swing mallet. This sledgehammer was an artifact, Doryukin, named by Hajime. It was equipped with some gimmicks that could be used by Shia. It operates by transforming the parts of the weapon that have magic poured into. What Hajime wanted to finish was this weapon. When Yue and Shia went shopping in the morning, he was making Shia's new weapon. This is the limit of the current me. I'll revise it again when my ability improves, because we don't know what will happen from now on. Although you received Yu's training, it was only for 10 days. It's still dangerous for you. That's why that weapon was made while thinking of how to make use of your power to the maximum. Please master it, okay? Because you have become our companion. Don't die without my permission, understand?
Hey, Jime-san. Foo-foo. Your speech is all over the place. It's okay. Although I am still not strong enough, I'll follow you anywhere.
Shia was so happy while embracing Doryukin. Because she was so happy, Yue, who felt a little ill-humored by it, thought to herself that it couldn't be helped and shrugged her shoulders. Hajime only showed a wry smile, although he didn't say it, to witness a scene where a beautiful girl was happy because she got a sledgehammer as a present. He felt it was surreal. With the joyous Shia in their company, they finished checking out from the inn. Even now, they ignored the inn girl, who looked at them with blushing cheeks. When they got outside, the sun was already at its zenith, and its brilliant shine fell on and warmed them. With his arms spread, Hajime took a deep breath. When he turned around, Hajime could see Yue and Shia were also smiling. Hajime nodded to the two and started to advance, followed by Yue and Shia. It was time to travel again. A heap of corpses. Those words fit the current spectacle inside the Raisin Grand Canyon's ravine. Some demonic beasts had their heads smashed, along with the ground, while some demonic beasts had theirs pulverized. Furthermore, some demonic beasts had their body carbonized. Although there were various killing methods, all of them died in one attack. Naturally, inside this hell, the place that was feared as an execution ground by people, there were
One hit certain kill
Hindrance.
Shut up! It was the trio of Hajime, Yue, and Shia. After Hajime and his party got out from the town of Brook, with Yue and Shia's fans seeing them off, using the magic-driven two-wheeler, they passed through the entrance of Raisin Grand Canyon. Currently, after advancing further and camping along the way, they had already passed through the cave concealing the path to Orcus' Great Dungeon. Furthermore, 2 days had passed since then. Inside Raisin Grand Canyon, the demonic beasts kept attacking them just as usual. Shia's sledgehammer, swung with immense force, smashed demonic beasts. It was literally a one-hit certain kill. The demonic beasts were crushed to death with a normal attack that far exceeded their defense. Even the mochi-pounding moon rabbit's destructive power paled in comparison to this. Yue closed in on the demonic beasts, then slaughtered them with magic that she instantly invoked with magical power from her equipment. Although Yue herself has enormous magical power, equipped with magical power stored inside the accessories called Magic Crystallization Stone series, it became even more enormous. Her attack could be compared to endless bombing, even if magical power was disintegrated in the ravine. Thus the time to invoke magic became longer and the distance became shorter. She invoked ultra-high temperature flames in no time, and demonic beasts were killed while being carbonized without exception. Hajime, needless to say, was sniping the heads with Donner while driving the magic-driven two-wheeler. Although it was consuming his magic to use lightning-clad and driving the magic-driven two-wheeler at the same time, there is no sign of magic depletion. The hell beasts that dominate the ravine were completely treated as small fish. The annihilation was treated as a side job. While they searched for a sign of the Great Dungeon, the demonic beasts' corpses overflowed on their way. Even though it should be somewhere inside the Raisin, it was too vast after all. They moved while examining if there were caves. Even though they made thorough observations, not even one was found. Hajime could only inadvertently complain.
Well, because no matter what happens, we'll reach the big volcanic mountain. It's okay to not find it at all. There might be some clues in the big volcanic mountain after all.
Well, even if that's so,
But those demonic beasts made it gloomy.
Yusan also dislikes this place?
while complaining and being disgusted by the demonic beasts that keep coming, they had kept traveling for 3 days. There are no results today and the dark had already set in. The beautiful shine of the crescent moon could be seen if you looked up. Therefore, Hajime and his party started to prepare their camp. After taking out the tent, they prepared dinner with ingredients and seasoning bought in the town. The tent and cooking utensils were artifacts Hajime made. The tent was created using creation magic, with heating stone and cooling stone installed. It's always kept at a comfortable temperature. It's also equipped with refrigerator and freezer made with cooling stone. Furthermore, the metal frame was imbued with sign interception from the mind-severing stone so that it wouldn't be found easily by enemies. For cooking utensils, there was a frying pan and kettle with an adjustable flame that was proportionate with the amount of magic used, and a kitchen knife endowed with wind claw in its sharp edge that could be activated by pouring in magic. There was also a steam cleaner-like thing. They were Hajime's beloved children that helped provide the meals on their travel. Moreover, because it could only be used using direct magic manipulation, it could be said that there was a crime prevention system. Age of Gods magic is truly a convenient one. Those were the words that Hajime said when he made the cooking utensil artifacts and the tent installed with a heating and cooling system. It's just like a useless technology that wasn't that useless that he uselessly refined. By the way, today's dinner was kururu chicken simmered in tomato. Kururu chicken was a chicken that was capable of flying in the sky. Its meat's quality and taste was just like chicken, a popular type of chicken meat of this world. It was a dish where the meat was cut into bite-sized pieces and floured. After that, it was sautéed, then boiled along with various vegetables in a tomato soup. It has the right flavor of butter and meat juice inside the meat. You could feel the tomato's sourness permeate in your nose when you smell it. When you put it into your mouth, the flavors will spread through. The meat will crumble inside your mouth. The potato, fat that's completely soaked inside the tomato soup, while carrots and onion sweetness transmitted to your tongue. To have bread melt and soften after dipping it inside the delicious soup truly made it more delicious. Dinner was finished with full satisfaction, and while immersed in the lingering taste, Hajime and his party chatted just like they always do. Inside the tent, they could leisurely chat because the mind-severing stone was activate, which made it so that demonic beasts do not approach them. Although sometimes there were demonic beasts that came near, Hajime only needed to stick his hand out the window that installed and shoot it. Moreover, when time for sleep, the three rotated the lookout duty until morning came. Today, it was about time for Yu and Shia to start preparing to sleep. The first on lookout was Hajime. Because there were fluffy futons inside the tent, they could sleep comfortably despite it being a camp. Also, Shia went outside the tent before getting into the futon. To Hajime, who was dubious of what happened, Shia said with a calm face,
For a while, I wanted to pick flowers.
"There are no flowers inside the ravine, you know?"
Hi, Misa.
Hajime's words that lacked delicacy destroyed Shia's calm face. She angrily stared at him. Hajime, who obviously knew what those words meant, said, my bad, with a wryly smiling face that didn't show any remorse. Shia hurriedly went to the tent's side in anger. After a while,
Hajime-san, Yu-san, it's an emergency. Please come here.
was what Shia shouted out, forgetting the possibility of demonic beasts hearing it. Wondering what happened, Hajime and Yue, who came from the tent, looked at each other, then dashed out at the same time. When they arrived at the origin of Shia's voice, they saw that there was a huge monolith that leaned on the ravine's wall after it fell, and a space was revealed between the monolith and the wall. Shia was inside that space seeing something unbelievable, being colored in excitement all the while.
Here, over here, I found it.
I understand. For the time being, get out of there. It looks like you used full body strengthening. Aren't you too excited?
Annoying.
The frolicking Shia was pulled out by Hajime and Yue's hands. When Hajime pulled her, he got a feel, while Yue gloomily frowned because of that. Guided by Shia into the crevice between the rocks, when they entered, the wall's side had a hollow interior, and it was wider than expected. Having entered that space, Shia silently, with a proud expression Bishi, pointed her finger at the wall. Hajime and Yu looked at the place pointed by that finger. Then they inadvertently let out, "Ha!" while blinking their eyes in surprise. In front of the two, in that place, there was a splendid rectangular signboard that was made with cuts in the wall, and strangely woman-like characters were carved there. "Please come into Milady Raisin's thrilling great dungeon?" The mark, CRLYTH, felt strangely irritating. What the heck is this?
What is this?
Hajime and Yue's voice came out in succession. I am seeing something unbelievable right now, were the exact presentations of their expressions. The two of them blankly looked at the signboard inside the hellish ravine.
To ask what? It is the entrance! Great Dungeons! It was found by chance when I went to pick flowers. Well, it was real. There is a great dungeon inside Raisin Grand Canyon.
While Shia/happy voice resounded, maybe because Hajime and Yue was finally able to get out of their surprise, they wore indescribable expressions, then looked at each other in perplexion. Yeah, do you think it's real? That's a long pause there. Your basis?
Melody?
It was that, after all. Milady, it was the first name of Raisin that appeared on Oscar's memorandum, although the name Raisin was conveyed and known by the world. The first name was unknown. Therefore, the chance that a place with its name signed in was the Great Dungeon of Raisin is very high. But no matter what they were honestly unable to believe was, why must it be this character? There was a reason for saying that. Hajime was considering the desperate fights that happened inside the Orcus Great Dungeon, and surely the other dungeons would also be along that line. That's why the lightheartedness of this made him lose his strength.
Yue also understood well the severity of a great dungeon. That's why her expression said that she still thought maybe it was someone's prank.
But the entrance-like place couldn't be seen, right? The interior was a dead end.
Not noticing what happened in Hajime and Yue's minds, Shia thought, I wonder where the entrance is, and was looking around the surrounding, then she peshi hit the hollow part of the wall. Oi, Shia, don't carelessly move around, were the words Hajime was unable to finish when part of the wall that Shia touched, Grun, suddenly rotated, and Shia disappeared to the other side of the wall. It was like a door mechanism inside a ninja's house. The credibility of that signboard miraculously increased with the finding of the entrance of the Great Dungeon. The Great Dungeon of Raisin was here, after all, even though they had a mountain of complaints such as, is this really okay for a great dungeon? And, give me my seriousness from Orcus back, something like that after seeing that amusement-like invitation. Hajime and Yue, who saw Shia silently disappear behind the rotating door, once more looked at each other, then let out sighs and put their hands onto the rotating door, just like Shia. Having activated the door, Hajime and Yue were sent to the other side just like Shia. The inside was pitch black, and the door was gururi, rotated back to its former position. And, at that time, sounds of something coming flying at them resounded, while they couldn't see anything inside the darkness. Hajime immediately used night vision and discovered what they were. They were arrows, countless arrows painted jet black so as to not reflect light, and they came flying to remove any intruders that entered. Hajime, with Donner in his right hand, used his left hand to beat down those flying jet black arrows. Kan, the sound of metal knocking metal came out without missing even one arrow. When counted, there were 20 arrows. Jet black arrows made of metal and didn't reflect any light scattered on the ground. When the last arrow was knocked down, silence returned. At the same time, the surrounding walls began to shine. The area Hajime and his party were in was a room with a length of 10 meters in every direction, and straight ahead, a passage into the interior appeared. In addition, there was a lithograph inside the room, with words with the same characters as the signboard carved on it.
Did you get scared? Hey, did this scare you? Then you're a kid, Naya Nia.
Or were you injured? Or did someone die? Boo-foo. How annoying. Hajime and Yue couldn't think of anything but one thing. That was how annoying. Also, the Nianya and Bufu part that were carved with emphasis as if to provoke them made them even more irritated. Especially if someone in their party truly died, then surely the survivor would curse the heaven. Hajime and Yue were so irritated that many veins popped out on their heads. Then, suddenly, Yue muttered something she just remembered.
Shia?
Having heard Yue's mutter, Hajime finally remembered, then looked back at the rotating door in panic. Because the door only did one rotation at a time, for her to not be here means the possibility that she got out at the same time Hajime and Yue entered were high. It made him feel something unpleasant because even though a lot of time had passed, she didn't enter, so Hajime immediately activated the rotating door. Shia was there, as expected, her form sewn on the rotating door.
Ooh! Hajime-san, please don't look, but I want you to take these out. Heck, please do it without looking at me.
It truly was a pitiful appearance. Shia, although unable to see the arrows that came flying, she probably used her natural search ability to somehow manage to dodge them from the sound. However, it seemed it was truly last second. With her clothes pierced here and there, she made a pictogram similar to those that were drawn on emergency exits. Her rabbit ears bent into something similar to a lightning bolt to avoid the arrows. Because she knew that she had done something impossible, her body still twitched even now. Most of all, Shia didn't cry out of fear of death. The cause was her feet were magnificently wet. Now that I remember, you're going to pick some flowers. Well, what to say? You only did the necessary.
Wrong! Oh! Huh? Just why didn't you finish that? The past me!
It was an appearance that you'd never want to show as a woman, even more so for Shia, who cried because she had shown it to the man she fell for. Her rabbit ears completely hung down. First of all, even if it was a chance to encounter love after 100 years, Hajime thought it was already too late. That's why, without looking away, he stared at her in amazement. And that hollowed Shia's heart even more.
Don't move.
Maybe because she was also a woman. Yue's expressionlessness contained sympathy, and she released Shia from the crucifixion.
I'll do something about it. You're still a novice.
Sob? Buh!
Hajime, change of clothes.
Here. Shia's change of clothes were pulled out from the treasure box. Then she did a quick change while blushing. Finally, Shia's preparations are finished. It's time to conquer the dungeon, was the enthusiastic shout that she let out, only to notice the lithograph. She looked down and her hair concealed her expression. Shia was silent for a while, then she slowly took out Duriken and struck the lithograph with all of her might. Gogya was the sound that resounded, accompanied with the destruction of the lithograph. Maybe because she was unable to endure it anymore, she magnificently swung Doryuken many times as if attacking the enemy of her parents. Then, in the place of the broken lithograph, characters were carved on the ground. It said, "Sorry, this lithograph will automatically be repaired after some time. Kukusukusu."
Mookie!
Shia was truly enraged and started to swing Doryuken more intensely. The small room was shaken, as if a small earthquake happened. The sound of extraordinary impacts were resounding many times. Watching Shia with a skeptical gaze, Hajime frankly muttered, "Milady Racin, rather than a member of the Liberators, she is unquestionably the enemy of humanity."
I absolutely agree on that.
Apparently, the Great Dungeon of Raisin would be a difficult place in a different way than the Orcus Great Dungeon. Raisin's Great Dungeon was a lot more troublesome than they expected. First, magic couldn't be used at all. It was because the strength of magic disintegration was far stronger than inside the ravine. For you, who specialized in magic, this place puts a heavy burden on her. She was unable to use high-ranked magic, and her magic's range of the magic she could use were shortened to their limits here. The farthest she could use them was only 5 meters. Somehow, the current level of magic she used was enough for combat. However, right now she was incapable of using magic strong enough to deliver a one-hit kill. In addition, although the amount of magic stored inside the magic crystallization series didn't decrease much, it couldn't be used. The consumption rate was too severe after all. Yua was only able to use middle-ranked magic because she was a genius. Most people would be unable to do anything. Even Hajime was greatly affected by it. Special magic that worked by emitting magic outside of the body, such as aerodynamic and wind claw, couldn't be used. Even the output of lightning clad is greatly decreased. Donner Schlag's power also fell below half of the usual, while Schlagen's maximum power was at the usual level of Donner Schlag. Therefore, body strengthening became the most important magic in this great dungeon. In Hajime's party, Shia had become the main star in this stage. So, the reliable rabbit ears of Hajime's party.
I'll do it, you know. Absolutely. When I reach the dwelling, I'll mess it up so much it'll be as if a storm had gone through.
With Doryukin on her shoulder, she examined her surroundings as if she was trying to find her prey. Her anger was obvious. It was a deep, deep anger. Even her words' intonation had become strange. The cause was, you could imagine it came from Milady Raisin's mischievousness. Because they understood Shia's feelings well, Hajime and Yue couldn't say anything about it. It was because if there was someone who was seriously agitated, by her side there would be someone calm in reverse of her. It was the current psychological state of Hajime and Yue. Currently, while Hajime and his party continued their advance, they had encountered various traps and annoying carved words. That's why with Shia, who was truly enraged by it, Hajime and Yue also felt irritated. Finally, Fohihi, strange laughter came from Shia's side, and Hajime recalled the extremely malicious things they encountered to get here. After Shia destroyed the annoying lithograph, Hajime and his party continued their advance into the passage and came into a certain vast space. Inside, there were staircases and passages. The passageway that continued from the entrance was a mess without any regularity. It was as if this place was made by casually combining Lego blocks. The staircase from the first floor was connected to a passage on the third floor, and the passage on the third floor gradually became a slope that connected to the first floor's passageway, while the staircase that was erected on the second floor was connected to nothing but wall. It was truly a mess. Once again, in a way, it was truly a dungeon-like place.
None. It is confusing.
Fun. As expected of a dungeon made by a rotten person. This mess is an expression of her mind's contents.
Because we understand what you feel, it's about time for you to calm down.
Shia was enraged even now. Hajime, half sympathized and half amazed, said, "Well then, how should we advance now?" while thinking about it.
Hajime, even if you think about it, there's no other method.
Well, you're right. For now, let's advance while marking and mapping the way. Hajime nodded at Yue's words. Mapping was the basic thing for exploring a dungeon. However, Hajime unconsciously frowned when he thought how troublesome it'd be to accurately map out a complex dungeon like this. Also, what Hajime meant by marking was using a special magic called tracking. This special magic operated by leaving a mark made a magical power on the places that he touched. When the mark was used on living things, Hajime was able to track where they moved. In case of this place, Hajime put his mark on the wall. Because the mark could be made visible, Yue and Shia were able to understand it. Maybe because the magic power was applied directly, the disintegration didn't seem to take effect. Hajime immediately put a mark on side of the passageway on the nearest place to the entrance and continued to advance. The passageway was 2 meters wide and made from countless blocks that looked like bricks. Because the walls emitted a faint light, there was no problem with their vision. Maybe it was made of a different material from the green light stone because it gave off bluish lights. When Hajime tried to see it using mineral appraisal, he found that it was called phosphorus ore. Apparently, it gave off light when it came in contact air. The first room didn't give off light, probably because it was the first room. The image that came out of the cave was Laputa, where the levitation stone appeared. There was an old man's voice that came out of the stone. After all, the phosphorus ore would keep radiating light as long as it was in contact with air. It was the masterpiece anime of Japan that Hajime unintentionally thought of while advancing in the long passageway. Suddenly, the sound came out of one of the blocks that Hajime stepped on. That block sunk into the floor due to Hajime's weight. Hajime and his party instinctively let out, "Eh," and looked at their feet. The sound of gliding blades resounded, and in the space between blocks on the wall, giant saw-toothed blades come out, rotated in high speed while vibrating. The blades approached them with height of the neck from the right, the one from the left wall at the height of the waist. "Evade it!" Hajime immediately shouted, and evaded it by leaning his back just like the protagonist from The Matrix, while the two behind him also tried to evade. Yue was small in the first place, so she only needed to squat down to evade. Shia also seemed to be able to evade it. From his back, "Hawawa! Hawawawa!" a shaken voice could be heard. Because there was no pain in her voice, Hajime guessed she must be unharmed. Although it was truly at a hair's breadth that the tip of the fur of her rabbit ear was cut, it was not a problem at all. The two blades that were filled with murderous intent and malice were unable to do anything to Hajime and his party, and disappeared into the walls. Being vigilant of a possible second wave, for a while Hajime watched his surroundings carefully. However, apparently that was the end. Having felt relieved, Hajime let out a sigh, then looked at his back, only to feel a chill. He dashed out instinctively to retreat, and using the momentum recovered Yu and Shia. Immediately, countless blades fell onto the place where Hajime and his party were in, just like a guillotine, and cut the ground as if it was made of butter. As expected, it was rotating in high speed and vibrating just like the blades from before. Hajime looked at the blades that dropped just a few centimeters ahead with cold sweat. Yue and Shia also stiffened because of it. It was a completely physical trap. I couldn't sense it with my magic eye. Until now, Hajime was able to avoid traps perfectly because they were magic traps. Of all the traps in the great dungeon that he had seen, all of them contained magic. That's why, if it was a magic trap, Hajime's magic eye was able to see through it. Therefore, he had the preconception that it was okay as long as the magic eye didn't react to something. In short, he overestimated his power.
How? I thought I was dead. Rather, Hajime-san, please stop it if it was just that much. Isn't that why you have the artificial arm?
Well, don't you think those blades were sharp? Even if it won't be able to cut it, there might be scratches. After all, I can't use Vajra now.
Scratches! Between equipment and me, which is more important?
Well, you're safe after all. Isn't that good?
Wah! What's with that topic evasion? That was a lie, right? I am the one that's more important, right? Right?
Shia tried to ask Hajime, who played her for a fool, and Yue added verbal abuse to the current Shia.
Leaking rabbit. You're dying because of your own inexperience.
Leaky! Please take that back, Yusan. No matter what, that was a disgrace for me.
A new disgraceful title added to Shia's Rabbit series, while Shia endured it with protest. Having entered this dungeon, although she almost died twice in short succession, Shia was unexpectedly energetic. As expected, Shia's forte was taking hits, even though the person herself won't admit it. It was, as Shia complained, there were other choices to evade the surprise attack. After all, Hajime should be able to stop those blades from a while ago with his artificial arm. His coat's also made from the leather of a demonic beast that boasted defense, and there were protectors underneath to guard the vital points. That's right, he wouldn't have died from something like that. However, the trap just now was nothing but overkill if it was against normal humans. If it were a normal protector, it'd be easily cut in two. After all, if you didn't have the equipment that Haji made from the materials that he'd gotten from the abyss, there was no other way to survive than to avoid it. Well, there is no problem if it was that much. While watching Yu and Shia's quarrel with skeptical eyes, Hajime told that to himself. No matter how powerful, if it was just physical traps, then it wouldn't be able to kill Hajime. Yu also had her auto-regeneration. She wouldn't die over a trap. In other words, Shia was the only one in danger. Even though he didn't know if Shia had noticed that, it was probably because Shia's stress level had reached the heavens.
Huh? Hajime-san, what's with those pitying eyes?
Please live strongly, Shia.
Yee? What are you suddenly saying? Although I could felt something very unpleasant from it.
Hajime and his party advanced while being wary of traps. Even now, they hadn't seen even one demonic beast. Although they considered the possibility that this dungeon didn't have demonic beasts in it, that was just optimism. It wouldn't be strange if they suddenly appeared, because that's also a form of a trap. Hajime and his party reached an open space after exiting the passageway. The roads were split into 3 inside the room. For now, Hajime put down the mark. Then Hajime and his party chose the leftmost passage that led to a staircase that went down.
Somehow I got a bad feeling about this. Look, my rabbit ears restlessly move from left to right.
Having advanced a few steps on the stairs, suddenly Shia blurted that out. Just as she said, Shia's rabbit ears stood upright, then began to move left and right. You don't raise any strange flags now. If you say something like that, usually something will immediately gawk on, see?
It's not my fault?
Flag rabbit?
While Hajime and Shia talked, an unpleasant sound resounded, and suddenly the stairs' steps disappeared. It was a considerably inclined staircase, and with the disappearance of the steps, it became a slope. Moreover, tar-like slippery liquid began to overflow from the countless small holes on the surface. This! When the steps became a slope, Hajime immediately transmutated the minerals on the bottom of his shoes into spikes. His artificial arm's fingers were also made into spikes so that he wouldn't slip down. Yue immediately jumped to Hajime before she started to slip. Hajime, who read that, also braced himself. As expected, they were harmonized even in this place. However, there was still one more person who was unable to do that kind of cooperation. It goes without saying that it was Shia.
Wukia!
When it became a slope, Shia raised a scream. Then the back of her head hit the surface hard. No! As she writhed in pain, then slipped along while covered in that liquid. In that state, with her legs opened in a M character, she collided with Hajime's face.
Boo!
The spikes on his artificial arm came off because of the impact. Hajime was overturned backward, with his left arm holding Yue. Then, the spikes on his feet also came off. He slipped down the slope head first. Shia was on top of Hajime with a reverse position. You, clumsy rabbit, move now!
I'm sorry, but to move.
While slipping, their speed became faster. Hajime desperately tried to stab the spikes on his artificial arm and shoes on the ground, but they were too fast, so it didn't go well. Then he tried to transmute the staircase, but with the strong disintegration inside the dungeon, it also didn't turn out well. Shia, while struggling, was somehow able to get up. Now it was as if she was riding Hajime. Use Doryuken stake! Hajime gave an instruction to Shia. The sledgehammer Doryuken that Shia carried had a few gimmicks prepared inside. One of them was to form a stake on the head part of the hammer. It was a mechanism to raise the penetrative power by focusing on one spot. If that was stabbed on the surface, they should be able to stop.
Hajime-san! The road!
Shia tried to remove Doryuken from its fastening/holding device on her back. Then, Shia, who looked forward, immediately raised an uneasy voice. Hajime was able to realize what had happened. When Shia slipped before, it was likely dropped. Yeah.
None.
Hajime immediately called out Yue's name. Even with only that, Yue was able to read Hajime's intentions. Shia, hold on tight.
Yes!
While still riding Hajime, Shia tightly clung to him. Finally, they reached the end of the slope and they were thrown in the air. One moment of weightlessness/floating. At that chance, Yue invoked her magic.
Soar.
It was an elementary ranked magic of wind system. It magic created a strong vertical updraft and it had increased one's jumping power. An expert would be able to make pseudo-flight using this magic. However, in this place, magical power was hard to maintain. That's why Yue's magic only lasted for a few seconds, and its effect only made Hajime and his party float. "It's enough." Hajime's voice, that was mixed with praise, resounded. That's right. For Hajime, it was enough if he got the time to confirm their surroundings. Yue completely and splendidly answered his expectations. Hajime, with Yue on his left arm and Shaya clinging to his neck, hung his artificial arm toward the ceiling. Then he poured his magic power. A sound come out, along with a thin wire with an anchor installed on it, and shot out from his artificial arm. It pierced the ceiling's wall. Then, because of the anchor, they were fixed to their place. Hajime and his party were currently hanging with one wire that hung on the ceiling. They felt relieved after confirming the anchor did not come off. Then they felt regret when they saw what was under them. Those sounds came from a lot of scorpions wriggling around, its length around 10 centimeters. Although it didn't give off the same feeling as that scorpion look-alike, it gave them the psychological feeling of disgust. If they didn't halt their fall with the anchor, they would dive into a sea of scorpions, and it gave them goosebumps all over their bodies when they thought that. The trio fell into silence. Because they didn't want to look below, they looked at the ceiling. Then, somehow, they noticed lights emitting into some characters. It was already too late. Hajime and his party inadvertently read it. "These guys doesn't have lethal poison, but you'll be paralyzed. Please be satisfied by yang with these cute children, Pugya." Maybe she purposely set up these phosphorus ores there. Those characters were standing out in the dim space. Those who fell here would surely, with scorpions wriggling around their body, desperately try to move and try to reach out to heaven. Ceiling. Then they'd discover it. Those playful words. Once again, Hajime and his party fell into silence, but because of something else. Ignore it, was what they told to themselves. And somehow they were able to observe their surroundings. "Bad Hajime, over there." Because Yue noticed something, she pointed her finger to a certain place below. There was an empty tunnel. "A tunnel? What should we do? Are we going to climb up to our previous location, or are we going over there?"
I will follow Hajime-san's decision. I have been nothing but a burden after all.
"No need, the punishment will come from the dungeon, so don't mind it."
That only makes me even more anxious. Isn't it better to just say, don't mind it?
Impudent. The punishment will become twice.
Wah, your son also joined him? Huh? Even if the dungeon is conquered, the future looks dark.
Hajime and Yue forgave Shia, who lamented. "Ha! No matter. What would be useful is if we could use your chosen future."
That was still. Although I've been practicing.
Chosen future was Shia's special magic. It was able to catch a glimpse of the future under some assumptions. However, it can only be used once a day. It was impractical because this special magic required large amounts of magic power to use. Even though Shia specialized in body strengthening, if her magic power drained, she'd only be a shameless rabbit. Although the amount of consumption was decreasing because of daily training, Well, it can't be helped if we can't use it. Rather than returning, it feels better to advance, so let's go to the tunnel. Hajime shot out another anchor, then moved just like Tarzan, until they safely reached the tunnel. Hajime and his party advanced in the passageway that was lit by phosphorus ores while being vigilant about any unpleasant traps that might appear. At the doorway of a certain passage, you'd notice that somehow there were only walls in the passage. Normally, one would see it as a dead end. However, some parts of the walls were actually connected to a room from several minutes ago. Silence lingered in the air. Immediately, sparks started to appear from the dead-end-like wall, and a hole where people could pass through in a half-crouching position appeared. Creeping out of it were... Zia, who? Hurry it up!
It'd be troublesome to be crushed by this.
Well, I don't think that was at a level where you'll only feel troubled, right? Wouldn't you normally die from it?
It was the trio of Hajime, Yue, and Shia. Hajime and his party were wandering around after escaping via the tunnel inside the Scorpion's room. Then they arrived at a room that had a standard trap where the ceiling dropped down and crushed them. They were unable to escape the room because the range was too vast. Immediately, Hajime and Shia used their backbones to support the ceiling, and with that chance, he used transmutation to make a hole in the ceiling. Most of all, transmutation was becoming harder to use because of strong magic disintegration in this place. The speed of transmutation became a grotter of the usual, and the range only 1 meter, while the amount of magic consumption became tenfold the usual. That's why Hajime only managed to transmute a small space, just enough to hold 3 people, and they moved toward the exit. Damn, even high-speed magic recovery was useless. The amount of recovered was too small.
For now, do you want to drink recovery potion?
Now, please, drink your
You guys, somehow, you have too much composure. Hajime, who felt a little tired, sat while leaning on the wall. Yue held the gesture of feeding someone chocolate, while Shia got the magic recovery potion from her pouch. Although it was possible to use the magic crystallization stone to replenish his magic, while it was convenient to get magic power from it, he wanted to preserve it. Furthermore, in this situation, it was more appropriate to use a magic recovery potion. I can't make any rebuttal on it. Hajime, who felt that he was in a play as a salaryman with Yue and Shia, and thought, while he received the recovery potion and drink it in a flash. It tasted almost the same as Leviatandi Hajime felt. The differences in speed and amount of recovery from magic crystallization stone was significant compared to this, but he could feel that his vitality had recovered a lot. Oosh! Was how he psyched himself up and stood up. Once again, they discovered those annoying sentences. Poo-poo, in a hurry, how uncouth. Apparently these annoying sentences were a seat along with the traps. Milady Ryzen was a person who put in a lot of effort to harass someone.
Absolutely not. We aren't that uncouth.
Having traced Hajime's gaze, Shia, who found those annoying sentences, let out grr while protesting toward those characters. It seemed Shia's hostility toward Milady already reached the heavens. She reacted every time she found those annoying sentences. Probably if Milady was still alive, she would have said, "Good prey have come," while grinning. Ignore that. Let's go. You don't need to mind that every time.
What you thought is important.
Okay.
Afterwards, they advanced on the passage and they reached rooms with other traps waiting. Suddenly, poisoned arrows came from every direction, sulfuric acid-like liquid, which melted anything that entered the pitfall. There was also a room where the floor turned into something like an antlion nest, with a worm-like demonic beasts in the center of the room. Also the annoying sentences. The stress level of Hajime and his party increased at Mach speed. Even so, they passed through all of the traps and arrived at the biggest passage they had gone through in this dungeon. Its width around 6-7 meters. It gradually became a slope that bent to the right. It was probably a passage that descended in a spiral shape. Hajime and his party kept vigilant. There was no way that a passage like this didn't have any traps in it. After a while, their thoughts proved to be right. An unpleasant sound of a mechanism could be heard. Immediately, they realized that they hadn't stepped on or pushed any switches. Then, you didn't need to use switches before. What kind of trap is it now? Was what Hajime and his party thought while examining their surroundings vigilantly. Then they heard something. It was the sound of something heavy rolling down. The trio went silent and looked at each other's. Then they looked overhead. At the same time, they couldn't see anything because the slope was curved. The strange noise became louder. Then, a giant boulder as big as the passage rolled down from the curve. The rock was in the form of a big ball. It was a completely standard trap. Surely after they desperately ran away, those annoying sentences would be there. Ye and Shia already turned their heels to run away as fast as they could. However, they were immediately stopped. It was because Hajime didn't move away.
Nen, Hajime?
Hajime-san? Let's hurry or else we will be crushed.
The duo called out to him, however. Hajime didn't answer back, then kneeled down while extending his right hand straight forward. His palm hung towards the big ball. The sound of an activated mechanism resounded. Hajime watched the approaching, roaring big ball, and his lips transformed into a fierce smile. Every time, I won't always do what you expect. It doesn't fit my nature. A loud sound of something being destroyed emerged when Hajime's artificial arm met the big ball. The big ball's force only pushed Hajime back a little thanks to his spikes, while Hajime's attack crushed the big ball at the center when they collided, and it was cracked all over. The big ball's force disappearing could be seen. Hajime shook his left fist along with the roar. Because the big ball's durability was barely exceeded by the power of Hajime's fist, it crumbled, and Hajime's fist was the victor. A thundering sound could be heard when the big ball crumbled and scattered into tiny pieces. Hajime drew back his fist while shaking it. Then he stood up. The sound of mechanisms couldn't be heard anymore from his artificial arm. Hajime observed his artificial left arm to check for any abnormalities while clasping and opening the hand. Then he turned to Yue and Shia. His expression was truly refreshing. I did it, was the feeling it emitted. It seemed Hajime also couldn't take it anymore because he had accumulated too much stress from the traps that he couldn't detect, followed by those annoying words. What Hajime used this time was the same attack that defeated one of Fea Belgayan's elders, a combination of a bullet's explosive power and great arm. In addition, he used his artificial arm to invoke vibration magic to crush the boulder. In other words, an oscillation fracture. Because of the huge burden, it was only to be used once. Normally it was his last resort, but he couldn't endure it, so that happened. Hajime, with a satisfied expression, turned around and he was greeted by Yue and Shia, who were excited.
Hajime-san! Just as expected of you. That was so cool! That was so neat!
Of course. With this, the path... Hajime wanted to answer to their praise. However, his words were interrupted. They could hear that sound. Hajime's smile stiffened. Shia also stiffened her smile, and the expressionless Yue twitched her cheeks. Hajime turned around with "Gigi," as if he was a machine that was forgot to be oiled, and what greeted him was a big metallic ball that shone with a black luster.
Hajime-san, maybe it was just my imagination, but somehow that thing also scatters a strange liquid. It melts.
That's right, the big metallic ball approached them while scattering liquid around. That came from small holes on its surface, and places that got splattered with the liquid melted with a shuwa, that kind of dangerous sound. Hajime, after confirming that, let out a breath, then faced Yue and Shia with a smile. Let's run, damn it! After that, while smiling, he shouted, and immediately he splendidly started running to descend the slope, just like a sprinter. Yue and Shia also looked at each other for a while, then Kururi chased after Hajime in a dash. At their backs, the sound of metal touching the ground along with the dissolution liquid approached them with its speed that gradually increased.
I absolutely don't want to be melted!
Nin, let's run for now.
Rather, Hajime-san, it's cruel to run ahead of us! Cold-hearted! Demon!
Noisy! It's a calculation error, Just shut up and run.
What's with that excuse? You don't care if anything happens to me, right? Oh, they'll come to haunt you if I die.
Shia, surprisingly calm?
Even while desperately running away, Shia was able to firmly complain. Yue was amazed by it. They finally saw the end of the passage. He confirmed it with farsight. Apparently, it was quite a big and wide space. However, what he saw was a little strange. He couldn't see the floor of the room even after a long time. Perhaps the exit of the passage that Hajime and his party were on was on top of the room's ceiling. It'll be descent.
Yes!
Hajime and his party were sliding. When they passed through the passage to the room, they descended on the exit. Then ¿Qué?
Niche?
3 different groans were raised. Right under the exit was a pool filled with an obviously dangerous ligid. That bastard! Hajime immediately shot out knives from his artificial arm, then used his artificial arm's anchor, while his right arm caught Yue to prevent her from falling. At the same time, the metallic ball that scattered around dissoluting liquids dashed out overhead and fell into the pool before their eyes. It sunk with blub-blub sounds, while smoke rose.
Wind wall.
Yue used her magic to disperse the scattered corrosive liquid. For a while, they carefully examined their surroundings, and nothing else happened. Finally, Hajime let his tension leave his shoulders.
Sob, hick, why only me? Only me! Ooh, sob!
Somehow at her side, Shia's crying voice could be heard. If you look carefully, she was stuck onto the wall by having several knives pierce her clothing, pinning her to the wall. Why did you suddenly cry?
Emotionally unstable?
If you see my current state, you should understand. Why was only Yue-san held gently while I was crucified? Hajime-san, please, can you just be even a little there to me?
Well, didn't I save you?
That's wrong. I want to be saved in the state that more girl-like. You understand, right? I wanted to be saved while being held just like Yue-san. Sob? What is it, Yu-san?
Look at the reality.
What does that mean?
You see, Shia, you're only our companion, and that's how I'll treat you. Yue is the one I love after all. That's why it can't be helped that my body moved on reflex, right? After the justifiable complaint and those justifiable words were said, while Puree crucified, tears floated on the edge of Shia's eyes and groaning could be heard. When he said, "The one I love," Yue's cheeks were blushing, and while being held by Hajime, she rubbed her cheek against Hajime's chest.
Absolutely. I will make you fall for me and save me by holding me.
What a spirited fellow.
You have the spirit, I will pay attention to it.
Under them was the pool of corrosive liquid, while hanging Hajime and his party still did the love comedy antic. They were gait composed as expected. Hajime and his party moved like a pendulum, using the anchor, then landed to the ground after jumping over the pool of dissolution liquid. It was a large rectangular room. On the both sides of the walls, there were sets of 2-meter-tall knight armor, equipped with large swords and shields. Furthest from the room was a staircase. Before that was an altar, and there was a door that gave out solemn aura. On the altar was a diamond-shaped yellow crystal. Hajime, who looked at that surroundings, frowned slightly. That was guided door. Is it Milady's hobby? If that's so, then peal cheer. Is it only me, or aren't those suits of knight armor giving off a bad feeling?
It's okay. It'll be just like promised.
Are they going to attack us? It won't be absolutely okay after all?
Hajime and his party advanced toward the center of the room while saying that surely it was as promised. The sound that was familiar to them came out. Hajime and his party immediately halt. They thought as expected, while looking around at their surroundings, and from the eye slits in the knights' helmets, Ginyid shone. Then, gasha gasha, sounds of metal rubbing each other came when those knights moved from their spot. They numbered 50. Those knights raised their shields while wielding their large swords in a piercing stance with their waists slightly lowered. Then, they completed the encirclement. Ha ha, it really is as promised. Although it was okay to destroy them before they moved. Well, there is no need to say, Yue, Shia, shall we?
Nen.
Aren't there too many? Well, P11 do it anyway.
Hajime pulled out Donner's Schlag. Although Metherized machine gun was more effective against such numbers, he didn't know how many traps were set in this room. The barrage of bullets that shot out indiscriminately would trigger all of them. Therefore, he chose the 2 railguns. Yue answered Hajime's words with a yell filled with fighting spirit. She understood that she had the least firepower inside this dungeon. However, she would not be a burden. As Hajime's partner, she won't lose to something like this. Even more so from now. There would be existences acting as her rivals in love. so she must not show any weaknesses. On Shaya's side, she lowered her waist a little. This party member was the lowest in terms of influence, but not her power. She knew her battle experience was still considerably insufficient. First of all, the battle against demonic beasts in the ravine merely lasted for 5 days. Even if the mock battle against Yue was included, it was only a little over 2 weeks of battle experience. Because she also came from the Halia tribe renowned for their gentleness, it was impossible for her to have a resolute attitude in battle. Rather, it could be said she showed great guts just to hold Doryukin while confronting her enemies. Shaya.
Yes! What is it, Hajime-san?
Shaya answered with a nervous voice when she heard Hajime's voice calling her. His voice was more tender than usual, or maybe it was just Shia's imagination. You are strong. We guarantee it. You won't lose against these golems. That's why don't ever think you're weak. If it becomes dangerous, I'll come to help for sure.
And it's my job to take care of my apprentice's problems.
Having heard Hajime and Yue's words, Shia inadvertently became teary-eyed. She was simply happy. Although she was treated harshly, when she thought it was because she was a burden, it made her feel uneasy. It was a needless anxiety. A novice should only do what a novice can do, as best she could. Shia activated whole body strengthening, then she powerfully and firmly stomped on the ground.
Fufu! Hajime-san is a little there now. PM, full of motivation now. Yue-san. The day for me to surpass you must be close.
Don't get carried away.
Although Hajime and Yue said that with amazed looks, Shia, who had her tension maxed, didn't hear that. She faced straight ahead and glared at the knights.
Here, come!
No, like PV said before, how did you get that material? She's already gone.
I won't refute that. I absolutely won't refute that.
With 50 Golem Knights in front of him, Hajime carried a tired expression even before the fight began, as if they understood Hajime's state. The Golem Knights started to attack the intruders all at once. The Golem Knights' movements were agile, despite their large build. Gasha gasha was the noise that appeared while they rapidly approached. They gave off intense force, along with their glinting weapons. It was as if walls were closing in from all directions. And Hajime aimed at those Golem Knights. Even though the 2 railguns he grasped in his hands were only able to put out power less than half the usual, their power that was still several times that of a real rifle, and was shot at the Golem Knights. 2 flashes of light targeted and shot 2 Golem Knights' heads accurately, at the eyes parts. The knights fell on their backs, from the impact to their heads. When the next set of knights drew near, Hajime lightly jumped. Then he shot them in rapid succession, and the lethal encirclement was thrown into disarray. Having endured Hajime's storm-like gunfire using shields, large swords, and the bodies of their companions, several knights finally drew near Hajime and his party. However, that was the gray hair with a blue hue Shia Holia's kill zone, who had set up her super-heavy sledgehammer in the air. Without any need to talk, with her physical ability strengthened to the limit, she let out a blow that cleared away everything. There was a yell. She brought down her sledgehammer, Doryukin, with a tremendous impacting sound. One of the Golem Knights was flattened. Although the knight set up its shield beforehand, its defense was still crushed. There were cracks and a dent on the ground caused by Doryukin. The attack was released with all her might. Maybe after it confirmed the dead body, a knight was able to set up its shield and endure the impact, while trying to cut Shia in 2 with its large sword. Shia firmly confirmed that, with a side glance. Twisting the handle, she adjusted the angle of Doryukin's head, then pulled the trigger. Such an explosive sound came from Doryukin that was on the ground, and it jumped. At Shia's side, a shot shell fluttered after rejecting from its case. While riding on Doryukin's momentum, Shia rotated in her place and delivered a blow carrying great centrifugal force. The knight that tried to bring down its large sword was hit in its flank. She let out a shout filled with vigor. The knight that received the direct hit had its body bent as if it was run over by a speeding truck. It magnificently rolled to the back and hit the other approaching knights. The knight's body, because it was unable to stop itself, was squashed and did not give any sign of movement. That sound of wind entered Shia's rabbit ears. When she took a peek at it, it was a large sword that the Golem Knights had raised. It was rotating mid-air after having parted from the knight. She had jumped and grabbed the large sword, and then with all her might, she threw it at the oncoming Golem Knight. The large sword flew with great velocity, and when it collided with the shield that the Golem Knight had set, the shield was flipped. Not missing that chance, Shia swung Doryoken from below. The Golem Knight, which had a large build, received the impact in its abdomen and floated in the air. Although it tried to swing the large sword in desperation, Shia raised Doryoken, then using the centrifugal force, clashed with the large sword, and this time Doryoken attacked the floating knight from a lower angle. Just like the previous Golem Knight, was blown away like a cannonball and flew at the nearby Golem Knights, swallowing them with its large build and laid on the ground. A smile floated on Shia's lips. It was not like she felt the pleasure of fighting. She was only happy that she could fight properly. She felt that she could continue traveling with Hajime and Yue now. At that moment, she was a little distracted. On the battlefield, such a thing is fatal. When she'd noticed, a lot of knights' shields had already drawn near. Somehow, the Golem Knights decided to throw their shields toward Shia. As expected of golems, they flew with extraordinary power. Although it wouldn't be fatal against Shia's strengthened body, they have enough power to cause a concussion.
If that happens, it's easy to imagine what'll happen next.
How careless. Though there was no time to think that. She at least tried to steel herself to endure the incoming attacks. Then, a laser-like water current attacked the shields right before they collided with Shia, and it bent their trajectories. The shields passed by the sides of Shia's head, then crashed into the Golem Knights behind her.
Unpreparedness is one's greatest enemy. Punishment will be thrice the usual.
Fue! Just now, was that from Yue-san? I am sorry. Also, thank you very much. Wait, punishment will be thrice?
Don't daydream.
Yes! I will try my best.
With a meh-like feeling, Yue scolded her. Shia was also conscious of her small carelessness. She braced herself while reflecting on it. Once more, she tried to defeat the approaching Golem Knights. With help from water lasers that flew from behind her back, the Golem Knight that tried to perform a sneak attack from behind of Shia was confirmed to be cleanly bisected. Shia felt a warm feeling inside her, knowing that Yue will protect her back. To not show any disgrace in front of her master, she raised her fighting spirit. Afterwards, the same water current flew at the knight who tried to go into the rampaging Shia's blind spot, and cut it just with sharpness, keener than blades. What Yue used was middle-ranked magic from water system called Rupture. It was a water cutter that fired the moisture in the air at ultra-high pressure. In Yue's hands were big metallic water bottles. There were also 2 other water bottles on her shoulder strap. These were something taken out by Hajime from Treasure Box. Every time Yue muttered the magic's name, water cutter would fly out from the water bottles that she held. Although Yue was able to use the moisture in the air, she thought it would consume too much magic power to pressurize it from scratch. Moreover, utilizing the exit of the water bottle to aim, the water cutter that came out didn't contain magic itself, so it wouldn't affected by the disintegration and disappear. Shia's explosive area attack was supported by Yue's water blade that covered her blind spots. The knights were incapable of breaking the duo's combination, and one by one they were destroyed as if being played with. Hajime, who took a side glance to look at Yue and Shia's splendid cooperation, floated a wry smile. Oi, you can do it after all. I wonder if I would also be capable of displaying something good. While joking to himself, Hajime started to enter close combat with Donner Schlag. He warded off a descending large sword of a knight with Schlag's barrel and shot its helmet at 0 distance with Donner in his right hand. Without looking at that knight who flew backwards, he warded off an attack from behind with Schlag and shot the knight behind him without turning around. Then he squatted down while rotating to dodge large swords that were swung horizontally. The knight's hands were intersected, and he shot their sides. A shot that didn't use lightning clad ricocheted from the knight's shield and hit a nearby knight's knee joint, destroying its balance. And then he jumped up, and while reversing his view, he destroyed the knight and another nearby knight at the same time from overhead. He parried large swords aimed at him with the back of his hands, then fired to his side while midair and 4 knights' heads were shot and crushed at the same time. As he landed, he took the bullets from treasure box and reloaded the guns by spinning them, and he resumed shooting while spinning. The surrounding knights were blown away radially. Doing that, without leaving a chance to be scratched, they slaughtered those golem knights one by one. However, while counterattacking the golem knights, Hajime raised his eyebrows in doubt. The reason being that, although a lot of the golem knights were destroyed, there was no change of density that approaching. It seems Yue and Shia were also having that doubt. Finally, when they carefully observed the battlefield, the golem knights that they had defeated could not be seen.
Replication?
Looks like it.
That can't be! Then it won't end at all.
That's right. After the golem knights were destroyed and lost the glint in their eyes, more knights with the same glint in body as those knights were reproduced in no time and rejoined the rank. Shia raised a panicked voice while mowing down the approaching knights. It was reasonable to say that, after all, no matter how many she defeated, there was no meaning to it. However, Hajime and Yue were calm. There was no impatience in their expressions as they kicked around the golem knights. This might be what is called a difference in experiences. They had experienced something like this many times in the depths of the abyss. Naturally, they were stronger now.
Hajime, if it's a golem, then there must be a core.
Just as Yue had said, it was normal for golem to have a core inside its body, and that core was the source of its power. The core was made using demonic beasts' magic stones. It was written down on blueprint of Oscar's cleaning golem. What Yue said was to destroy that core. However, Hajime floated a bitter expression having known Yue's proposal. What can I say? These guys didn't have a core at all.
Really?
I have confirmed it using magic eye. There is no mistake about it. Although I was able to find some suspicious magic power from the golem.
It ended with that after all. It'll be bad if this keeps up.
Shia raised her voice filled with impatience. Hajime only let Shia's shout pass through his ears, then used mineral appraisal. For golems that operated without core, he wondered, are they made using special ore? His thoughts were right on the money. Induction ore, an ore that naturally induces magic. It was able to establish a connection of magic power between 2 or more induction ores. Using one ore, other ores with an established connection of magic power can be remotely controlled. These golem knights made using induction stone must have something that acted as a remote control. Although Hajime and his party thought it was replication, it was actually rearrangement by manipulating the ore. They only needed to add to the parts that were insufficient. It's actually more like reconstructing rather than replicating. If you looked carefully, you'd notice that the floor was also made using the induction ore, and parts that appeared to be cut away could be seen. Those were probably used to replenish the parts of the golems. Without defeating the controller, it'd be truly endless. Yue, Shia, there must be something that's controlling them. Because it's seriously endless, let's break through them.
Nengibar.
Breakthrough? Affirmative.
Under Hajime's signal, Yu and Shia immediately dashed out toward the altar. Hajime advanced, using Donnerschlag's rapid fire against the knights, and as they scattered, a path was created. 2 grenades were thrown toward the knights that approached from behind. With a big explosion in the back, the golem's knights were felled one after another by the blast and the shockwave. Shia advanced through the space that Hajime made, while rotating Doryuken mowing down golem knights all the while. The golem knights were skillfully throwing their shields and large swords at Shia, only to have Yue's rupture come and split them. Hajime, whose duty was to guard the rear, fired his railguns in rapid succession at the golem knights approaching from behind. Using the opportunity, Shia passed through the encirclement and arrived in front of the altar. Next was Yue, who arrived in front of the door after jumping over the altar.
Yue-san! The door?
It was sealed after all.
Oh, as expected.
In front of their eyes were the suspicious altar and door. They had guessed it'd be sealed. That's why they originally thought it'd be troublesome and decided to slaughter the knights instead. While they resolved to release the seal on the door, Shia complained as usual, which resulted in knights flying in from the stairs. To leave the seal to Yue. I'd take too much time to break through it using transmutation. Hajime stood beside Shia to look out for her back. Just as Hajime said to forcibly use transmutation to break through the door, although it might be possible, it consumed large amounts of magic power in this area, and it also take a lot of time. That's why, having reached the altar with the yellow crystal with so much effort, it was faster to release the seal normally. Hajime, who thought so, left the duty to Yue, who had bad magic consumption.
Leave it to me.
Yue readily acknowledged that and immediately took the yellow crystal from the altar. That crystal was in a square made of pyramid shape. If you looked carefully, it was made from combinations of solid blocks. Yue looked back at the door behind her. There were 3 indentations there. Yue thought for a while, then started to disassemble the square of pyramids. She reassembled those blocks to make new cubes that fit the indentations. While assembling those, Yue observed the indentations in the door. Then, only by carefully observing it, she noticed small characters that were carved there. They said, "I wonder if can you solve it? One wonder. You'll die if you don't do it fast, you know. Well, it can't be helped if you can't solve it. You're just an ordinary human unlike me after all. Don't worry. Even if your head is bad, you can live. You can't live. How regrettable. Pugya." They were the annoying sentences as usual. Yu was truly irritated by it. With her usual expressionlessness, she concentrated to solve the puzzle, although she wanted to punch the door. Somehow, Hajime and Shia could feel her anger from her back, and could only curse in their minds while concentrating on destroying Golem Knights.
Hajime-san, please use Dopa, just like before.
Like a certain black thing from the kitchen, the Golem Knights swarmed disgustingly. That's why Shia begged Hajime to use a grenade. Idiot. That must be thrown where it was sure no trap was installed. If it was thrown near the stairs, you must know what might happen.
You said it now, even after it laid waste to the golems before?
Well, it was something Milady Raisen made. Isn't it possible that it won't react only against Golem?
Ugh, I can't refute that.
In certain ways, Hajime and Shia only played around with the Golem Knights so they could make idle talk. In the beginning, Shia was truly impatient about it, but when she saw how calm Hajime and Yue were, she calmed down.
But it made me somewhat happy.
Hey? Once more, while smashing a Golem Knight then making it fly with a kick, Shia blurted that out.
Just a little while ago, I, who was only capable of running away, was able to fight together with Hajime-san. It made me so happy.
You are truly a curious one.
I finally able to flirt with Hajime-san after we captured Dungeon. Yay.
Oi, you! How did you connect to that? It's the same as raising a death flag. To be a tragic heroine will be too much for you, so stop that. Also, I just can't rebut it. But you know this material, right?
It was tea absolutely won't let you die, my honey. Something like that? Hajime-san! Ma!
You twisted it too much. Recently, although I was scared of your positivity, I don't have any appropriate remarks for it. They kept chatting for several minutes while repelling those knights. In a way, in the space between the two who kept flirting, a shadow appeared. It was Yue.
Flirting is forbidden.
Well, we didn't do anything like that.
Nufufu. Is that what it looks like? How embarrassing!
It's better for you to shut up. Somewhat. After Hajime looked with a side glance at Shia with a tired expression, he turned to Ye, who looked a little displeased. However, without rethinking about this situation, this time she showed a little proud look, having done a great achievement.
It's open.
How fast, just as expected of Yua. Shia, fall back.
Yes!
Hajime took a peek behind him, and as Yue said, the seal had released and the door was open. There seemed to be nothing unusual inside the room. Hajime told Shia to withdraw. Then he retreated toward the room. The Golem Knights wouldn't able to chase after them if they closed the sealed door. Yue was the first to retreat. Next was Shia, who jumped beyond the door, and because it was a double door, they were on standby at both sides to close it. Hajime threw several grenades as farewell gifts and dived into the room. Although the Golem Knights rushed after their escape, they were scattered by the strong impact that came from the grenades. Their balance were destroyed. Without missing that chance, Yue and Shia closed the door. Inside the room, using Farsight, it was confirmed that there was nothing at all. Surely, even if it was not Milady Risen's room, there must be some clue leading to it, right? And that was what they thought, while losing their momentum. This, isn't it that? Even though there was a conspicuous seal, there was actually nothing inside. Is it that kind of punchline?
That can't be. Oh, milady, how much do you want to take us for a fool?
The trio were dropped because of that most possible possibility. Suddenly, they heard the familiar, unpleasant sound. Along with the sound of mechanisms beginning to operate, the room trembled. Then, G came from the side of Hajime and his party. Kay? What happened? Did the room just move?
Looks like
At the same time, Hajime said that this time the G came from above. Because of the radical change, Yue may have bitten her tongue as she covered her mouth with teary eyes while trembling. Shia fell from the ceiling in a frog-like pose. The room continued to change its direction several more times. It was stopped after approximately 40 seconds of ignoring the law of inertia. Hajime was able to endure the impact of a sudden stop by fixing his location using spikes driven into the ground, while Shia, who unable to endure it, was rolling around, flying, and hit the back of her head hard against the wall. She rolled over here, she rolled over there, and raised a scream every it changed direction. That's why her complexion was bad. It was as if she was drunk. She was completely down like a drunk, with sharp pain in the back of her head. By the way, since the start, Yua was clinging to Hajime's body, so she had no problems at all. Foot finally stopped. Yue, are you okay?
no problem.
Hajime retracted the spikes and stood up. There was no change at all when he observed the surroundings. Considering the movement, the door they entered from should connect to a different place.
Hajime-san, why are there no words for me?
Shia, who covered her mouth with blue face, stared at Hajime. It seems she was displeased because he only asked Yue. Well, if one asks the current you, it'll reverse the momentum, and then you'll throw up and get Vomiting Rabbit as a new title. You don't want that, right?
Of course. Even so, I wanted to be asked because that was a made-uppu.
See, it's better for you to rest a little now.
Oh, Appu.
Leaving alone Shia, who was on all fours that seemed to vomit at any moment, Hajime and Yue confirmed the surrounding. Finally, there was nothing after all, and they faced the door. Well then, what shall we do?
Is the one that controlled it there?
There is that possibility. Milady should have died, then who on earth moved those Golem Knights?
Subsequently, Shia too.
I can't hear you, Uppo.
Hajime smiled, having heard Yue's typical words. Gently, with one hand he rubbed Yue's head.
Yue, who wanted to be spoiled, came closer while pleasantly narrowing her eyes.
Even though I remembered saying this before, could you stop suddenly entering into a world of just the two of you? What can I say? To be alienated makes me feel so lonely, Uppu.
While enduring the nausea, I don't want to be left out, was what Shia expressed while crawling on all fours. Even though I had also said it before, it still comes out, so could you stop that horror flick-like movement? What can I say? It'd be scary if it appeared in my dreams.
That's good to be beside you, even just a little, is a maiden's heart. Uppu. I also wanted to be patted just like Yue-san. Please embrace me and pat me.
To say that with the face of someone who will vomit at any moment. Moreover, to casually add your own demands.
It is still too early for Shia to be patted by Hajimen.
With her willpower, Shia came to Hajime and Yue's side. She looked at Hajime with expectant eyes and a pale face. Hajime guiltily averted his gaze to face the door. Behind him, why? Upu was the noise that could be heard, but he just let it pass through his ears. On the other side of the door, will it be Milady's dwelling, Golem's controller, or just another trap? Hajime thought, come whatever it is, while he opened the door with a fearless smile. There was,
Have I seen it before? This room.
certainly, especially that lithograph. Ahead of the open door was another room. There was a lithograph and passage at the left side of the room. They should have memories of this room, because this room was...
It looks like the first room, right?
Shia thought that even though she said it, she didn't want to think it was so. However, certainly, just as Shia said there was the lithograph with the annoying sentences carved, just like the first room. But there was a difference from that room. The proof was, after several seconds the door opened, characters floated up from the original room's floor. Nay, right now, how do you feel, even though you had advanced after much hardships, only to arrive at the starting point? How do you feel? Nay, how do you feel? What kind of feeling do you have? Nay. The expressions of Hajime and his party Suton fell from their faces. Their expressions perfectly fit the words, no mask. The trio watched as the characters silently and smoothly moved. Then, additional characters started to appear. Ah, there is something I forgot to say. This dungeon will be altered at regular intervals. As usual, it was Milady-chan's thoughtfulness to make you enjoy the dungeon with a fresh feeling. Are you happy? You are happy, right? There is no need to reward me. I only do it because I like it after all. By the way, because it always changes, mapping it was useless. Don't tell me, did you make it with so much hardship? But, sorry, Pyogya. Ha 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 ha.
Foo, 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 foo. Every. Foo. Hi.
The trio let out 3 different types of broken laughter. Afterwards, needless to say, screams were echoed through the entirety of the dungeon. After getting through the first passage, it was just as Milady said. The stairs were greatly altered, along with the differing position of the corridor ahead of them. It goes without saying that they let out resentful voices again because of the structure. Somehow they managed to regain their spirits. Hajime and his party once again tried to conquer the dungeon. However, it wasn't a smooth sailing as expected, especially Shia, who always triggered the traps. Gold basin, bird lime, shots of liquids with strange smell, etc. Weren't those psychologically dangerous? That is to say, she became totally enraged. Well, troublesome things are troublesome after all. Inside a certain room, pale light was faintly emitted by the walls, and the shadows of 3 people close to the wall were cast. It was Hajime, Yue, and Shia. Yue was on Hajime's right side, while Shia was on his left, and they sat while leaning against his shoulders. Although silence filled the room, if one focused their ears, sounds could be heard. It was Yue and Shia's breathing. They were both embracing one of Hajime's arms and slept using his shoulders, as a substitute for a pillow. Today marks 1 week since Hajime and his party entered the dungeon of Raizen. During that time, a lot of traps and annoying sentences continued to exhaust their bodies and minds. They had been returned to the starting point 7 times, attacked by lethal traps 48 times, and other meaningless traps for 169 times. Even though at first their hearts were filled with anger toward Milady Raizen, after 4 days had passed, it looked like their mental states became, no matter what appears next, it doesn't matter. They had an abundance of rations, and their body specs made it so that they wouldn't easily die were the fortune within their misfortune. Now, they were resting after advancing, searching for clues all the while. As a result, they understood the pattern of the structure alteration. Using Mark, they were able to confirm where those blocks were repositioned. There might be additional progress from now on. While he thought that, Hajime turned toward the girls that slept on his sides. They sleep so comfortably. Isn't this a great dungeon? Hajime's murmur mixed with a wry smile resounded. He had stayed up for a long time as the lookout. Hajime quietly released his arm that somehow got embraced and stroked Yue's hair. A slight smile could be seen. Hajime's eyes also slightly reverted to their former state. Next, he changed his glance to Shia on the other side. She splendidly drooled on Hajime's shoulder, while Munya Munya, she moved her mouth, and it truly was a slackened, sleeping expression. He remembered that she also wanted her head patted, so he gayly stroked Shia's hair. Immediately he felt the rabbit ear's fluffiness. It was followed by her showing a loosened expression that she doesn't show even under normal circumstances. It was a truly relieved expression. For the most part, it only occurs when Hajime was on lookout. Well, it could be said that she'd feel relieved when Hajime was by her side. Hajime, who gently stroked the blue-hued gray hair as well as the rabbit ears, showed a complex expression. Geez, just what's good about someone like me, that you would follow me, even here. He looked at Shia with tender eyes while throwing abusive words at himself. The thing that Shia sought could be compared to the feelings that Yue had. Even so, Shia's positive attitude, cheerfulness, and how she cried but never gave up, greatly attracted Hajime's fancy. As a result, his strokes became even gentler, and, at that time, Shia, who, Munya Munya, started to talk in her sleep.
Munya, Hajime-san, how bold to do it outside. Everyone will be.
Hajime, who looked at her with gentle eyes, immediately erased his smile. He gently used both hands, and girately moved them, to pinch Shia's nose and close her mouth. Shia's calm expression gradually changed to a painful one, but he didn't mind it and kept doing it.
Nin, 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 pa, ha, ha. What are you doing? Even though it was an attack while I sleep, it has the wrong meaning.
Shia, who zeha panted, woke up then fiercely protested. Hajime turned toward her with cold eyes. Well, inside your mind, what kind of a pervert am one? What will you do outside? Nan!
Ha! That was a dream? Why, even though Hajime-san finally became dare, it was impossible to suppress the pathos that gushed out and the bashfulness of me that writhes in agony because of those words finally decided in public.
Without listening to any more of it, Hajime used strengthening to flick her forehead. Shia became face up because of the big impact, and the back of her head hit the wall behind her hard, which resulted in her scatting with teary eyes. As expected, her shameless character always slips out. While rubbing the back of her head, Shia muttered, "Somehow I felt something happy happened, but is it just my imagination?" Probably she unconsciously felt Hajime patting her. However, because he had known she would get carried away if he told her the truth, Hajime decided to ignore her. Because Shia woke up, although by force, Hajime gently shook Yue to wake her up. "Nunu!" "Ow!" let out that lovely voice while slowly opening her eyes. Then, with a blank expression, she looked upward and confirmed Hajime was there. Once again, she rubbed her mouth on Hajime's shoulder. Then she quietly parted from Hajime's shoulder. Saw this face turn to appearance.
You-san is so serial cute. This is how a girl wakes up compared to Hurl was.
Shia began becoming depressed this time, and Yue looked at her in wonder, only to let out an explanation, because it was Shia after all. "Look, from the beginning you understood the overwhelming difference in battle power, girl power, right? Rather than being depressed, start doing some soul searching."
What gentleness? You didn't drop it somewhere?
Hajime didn't drop anything like that.
Gusu, homemade to you-san. Damn.
Shia stood up, after some soul searching. Yue and Hajime were also ready. This time they prayed that they wouldn't be returned to the starting point, and so the trio resumed their dungeon pun guest. Once again, because there will be a lot of unpleasant traps and annoying sentences, they cleared their mind and soul. Then, Hajime and his party reached a room that they had only visited once, even after a week. It was the room with Gollum Knights that made them remember how mad they were when they got returned to the starting point the first time. However, this time, the sealed door was open from the start, and inside was not a room but a passage. "It'd be troublesome if they encircle us again. Let's rush to the open door at once."
Mmm.
Yes!
Hajime and his party broke into the Golem Knight's room at once. When they approached the center of the room, as expected, gashan gashan, the sound of Golem Knights rushing out from the recesses on both sides of the walls resounded. From the start, they ran forward while kicking and shooting those Golem Knights, which bought them some time, while Hajime and his party ran faster still to reach the altar before being caught by the Golem Knights' encirclement. Although the Golem Knights rushed after them, they were unable to catch up to Hajime and his party that had already passed the door. Having successfully escaped, Hajime was grinning. However, Hajime's smile vanished in the next moment. This time the Golem Knights also passed through the door, chasing after them. Also, what? They can run on the ceiling?
Surprising.
Gravity-san, please do your work.
That's right. The Golem Knights that chased them, as if ignoring gravity, were running on the walls and ceiling, giving off gashan gashan sounds of moving heavy armor. Because of this, even Hajime and his party were surprised by it. Hajime immediately looked at the passage, then used mineral appraisal, but all materials were already known. He didn't detect any minerals that could neutralize gravity or any with adhesive nature. How did they do that? Those were the unintentional mutterings that leaked out from his mouth, and once more he took a peek at the Golem Knights behind him, becoming even more surprised as he turned around. One of the Golem Knights on the ceiling was running, while Pion, jumping, and like a cannonball it advanced with tremendous momentum toward them, while jumping in midair. Shitty bastard! Hajime let out a surprised voice, then fired Donner rapidly. The bullets fired, accompanied by flashes, and the Golem Knight's helmet and shoulders were destroyed. The Golem Knight's headpiece separated from the body, and the large sword and shield were also dropped. However, without falling to the ground, it advanced toward Hajime and his party as is. Evade.
None.
Wikia.
They avoided the Golem Knight's head, body, large sword, and shield that came fast and furiously by jumping and bending their bodies. The wreckage of the Golem Knight passed Hajime and his party, flew towards the walls and ceiling without reducing its momentum, and then crashed and rolled around on the floor. Oi, isn't that?
It looks like it fell.
Gravity-san is at work, I understand.
It was just as represented by Yue's and Shia's words. Apparently, those Golem Knights were able to control gravity. Although no one understood why they didn't use it last time, probably because previously it was a room, they might be only able to use it after the room changed into a passage. While making that hypothesis, Hajime and his party were interrupted by Golem Knights that fell. Some of them approached while spinning their large swords as if they were pinwheels in a veteran-like manner. Hajime and his party used gunfire and rupture for ranged attacks, while Shia struck those that drew near, and they advanced without stopping. After a while, Hajime and his party felt a different presence from those knights. The knights came with shields raised and moved gallantly as if they had become a wall. The Golem Knights created a two-row formation where the knight in the back supported the defending knight in front. Perhaps they had learned that with only a single row they'd be crushed with sheer power. How troublesome. While clicking his tongue, Hajime put Donnerschlag back into their holsters. After that, he took out one weapon from treasure box. In his hands was a weapon with rectangular shape and 12 rotating barrels, the rocket and missile launcher, Orkan. The rockets themselves were 30 centimeters in length. Each of them had more destructive power than the usual grenade. Using creation magic, the warheads were installed with stones that could generate lightning-clad. Because these stones constantly generate static electricity, they were cobbled together with combustion powder that'd be ignited by the warhead upon contact. Hajime was grinning while he fixed Orkan to his side. Yue, Shia, cover your ears. They'll blow them up.
None.
What was that?
Shia, who saw Orkan's bizarreness for the first time, could only open her eyes wide. Yu was the first to thrust her index fingers into her ears. Shia's rabbit ears pin stood upright, unconcerned. Hajime pulled Orkan's trigger. Along with that sound, the rocket was launched, leaving trails of sparks behind. It was aimed at the platoon of golem knights that laid in wait. Then it hit. In the next moment, a roaring sound came along with a large explosion. The pressure that came from igniting a large amount of compressed combustion powder greatly shook the passage. The golem knights that were in the line of fire and received a direct hit were violently thrown against the walls on both sides as well as the ceiling. They were destroyed to the point that they didn't even resemble their original forms. It'd take a fair bit of time for them to be reconstructed. Hajime and his party jumped over the wreckage of the fallen golem knights at once.
My rabbit ears were?
While Hajime and his party ran, Shia folded her rabbit ears and held them with both hands in agony with teary eyes. The Rabbit Man tribe had the most excellent hearing among the demi-human race after all. That's why I said to close your ears.
Eh? What is it? I can't hear you.
Truly, a shameless rabbit.
Although Hajime and Yue looked at Shia with amazed expressions, Shia, who was in agony, couldn't notice it. After dealing with golem knights that had come falling once again, they ran through the passage for 5 minutes. Finally, they saw the end. Ahead of the passage was a huge and broad room. The road itself was broken, and they could see a squalor scaffold 10 meters ahead. You, Shia, jump! Hearing Hajime shout, Yue and Shia, who somehow recovered, nodded. At their backs, the golem knights kept coming down. While they tried to intercept, Hajime and his party that kept avoiding them reached the end of the passage and jumped. The jumping power of Hajime and his party, who used body strengthening, far outstripped Olympic athletes. Hajime and his party easily broke the world record and jumped to the square before them. But it was a characteristic of this great dungeon that nothing comes out as expected. Somehow, in front of Hajime and his party that jumped, drawing a parabolic arc, the square block began to move. What? Hajime raised the shout that he had let out many times in this dungeon. Because the distance they judge was altered, they will fall at this rate. They took a peek below and saw that it was gate deep. When he prepared to shoot out the anchor, Yu's voice immediately rang out.
Soar.
Using the updraft from wind magic, Hajime and his party's jump distance extended. Even though it was only for a moment, it was enough. He somehow succeeded, catching the edge of the block that was still moving even now. Using the spikes on his artificial arm to secure him in place, Hajime was hanging with Yue and Shia clinging to him. Nice, Yue.
As expected of you, sir.
Praise me more.
While unconsciously smiling because they had avoided the fall, Hajime and Shia praised Yue. Yue, who had consumed a large amount of magic power, was a little tired but showed a triumphant mood. However, that peaceful atmosphere was disrupted by the golem knights that came flying. That's right, the golem knights were flying in the air. They probably controlled gravity so that they wouldn't fall. They approached Hajime and his party, who were currently hanging, with tremendous momentum. Yue, Shia, climb me! While issuing that order, Hajime took out Donner and rapidly shot at the approaching golem knights. Yue and Shia climbed up Hajime's body, which was still moving along with the block. Then Hajime raised his strength to pull himself onto the block, using only one arm. Immediately after, the place where Hajime was previously hanging was pierced with large swords that came hurtling with tremendous velocity. Afterwards, Hajime shoots from overhead the golem knights that were stiffened due to post-skill latency. Shit, these guys. I don't know if it was caused by the gravity control, but their movements and tactics became better.
Perhaps the cause is here?
Ha ha ha! What's with common sense? Isn't everything floating?
Just as Shia said, everything in their vicinity was floating. The place that Hajime and his party had entered was a gigantic spherical room. The diameter itself was more than 2 kilometers. Inside the room, blocks with all kinds of shapes and sizes were floating and, moved irregularly. It was a space that completely ignored gravity. However, for some reason, Hajime and his party still felt gravity. Perhaps only specific materials in this room were not restricted to gravity. Inside this room, golem knights were able to fly around freely. Their falling directions were controlled, after all, as they rapidly turned around. If they were living beings, it wouldn't be weird for them to die due to the tremendous G-force. When he thought how their movements and tactics became better as they approached this space, perhaps the one who controls the golems might be here, in this room, I think. Hearing Hajime's guess, Yue and Xia also agreed and then stiffened their expressions. No one knew why, but the surrounding golem knights did not attack them. For now, because nothing happened, they observed their surroundings. They didn't know if it was the last destination or if it continued after. However, this room was definitely close to the innermost room, proven by how the golem knight's abilities were improved and the uniqueness of this room. Hajime used Farsight to investigate the gigantic spherical space with his eyes. And, in the next moment, Shia's unease-filled voice rang out.
Run!
Hajime and Yu, without asking what it was, instantly jumped when they heard Shia's warning. Fortunately, a block just passed by several meters ahead of them, allowing them to leave the block they were previously standing on. A meteorite-like illusion came and it crashed into the block that Hajime and his party were on just a moment ago, blasting it into fine pieces. Meteorite wasn't necessarily the wrong term for it. After all, something gigantic made a scorching fall, and with its momentum it destroyed the block and passed through. Cold sweat flowed on Hajime's cheeks. He would have received a direct hit from that without Shia's warning. With him being unable to use Vajra, it would be an instant death. He was also unable to sense it coming, but immediately after Shia's warning, he certainly felt the presence. However, with its falling speed, it would be impossible to avoid it when he sensed it coming. Shia, you saved us. Thanks.
A big achievement.
It was good that Foresight was activated. Although all of my magic was taken instead.
Apparently, Shia's special magic Foresight activated faster than Hajime's perception was able to sense it. Foresight was able to see the future as a result of Shia's assumed choice if she activated it manually. Also, it could activate automatically. Just like this time, it saw through the big danger accompanied with death that affected her directly or indirectly. In other words, if they received a direct hit, at least Xia would have died from it. With a new feeling of horror, Hajime looked at the meteor-like thing that had passed them. He peeked below from the edge of the block, and, when he thought something moved below, it suddenly flew up with tremendous momentum. It went above them in no time, and while remaining in place, ging! Its eyes shone while glaring at Hajime and his party. Oi, seriously.
It's got the feeling of the big boss in News Kit.
Hajime and his party muttered 3 different impressions of it. Although Yue's remark was a little dangerous, it was still at the limit of tolerance. It should be. What appeared in front of Hajime and his party was a super big golem knight that floated in midair. Although the armor was the same, its length should be around 20 meters. Its right hand was burning as if it was a heat knuckle, and it might be what caused the block from before to be blasted to pieces. In its left hand was a chain that made jahara sounds, equipped with a flail-type morning star. Hajime and his party took their stances as they saw the gigantic golem, and they could hear hyun sounds from the surrounding golem knights that came flying until finally Hajime and his party were surrounded. The golem knights, who stood in line, raised their large swords in front of their chests. It was as if they were saluting their king. Hajime and his party were completely encircled and could feel their tension raised. Silence filled their surroundings. It was as if it was a critical situation. The moment they move, the game that bet their lives, slaughter, would begin. What destroyed the strained mood that was caused by such a premonition was the joke-like greeting from the gigantic golem.
Yaho! Nice to meet you. Milady Ryson, that's loved by everyone, is here.
Huh? From the gigantic golem equipped with brutal equipment and full-body armor and a helmet whose sharp glint was able to make people freeze, was a random and light greeting. The words that it had said couldn't be understood even by Hajime. His mind was somehow trying to escape the reality in front of him. Even Xia and Ye forgot that they were encircled and could only stare blankly with their mouths opened. Because the trio stiffened, the gigantic golem let out a sullen voice. It was a woman's voice.
You know, because I already gave out a greeting, reply with something already. That's proper manners, you know. Geez, that's why youngsters of this generation, Should have more common sense.
They were words filled with real irritation. Moreover, the gigantic golem was raising its burning right hand and its left hand that held on the thorned iron ball at shoulder height. It was a random and human-like gesture, as if it said, "Yar yar days," while shrugging its shoulders and shaking its head. But Hajime and his party were the ones that were truly irritated by it. It was as if they were seeing those annoying sentences again. Although the one that called itself Milady Raisen might be the one behind those words, that woman should have been dead. She was a human, after all. For the time being, Hajime observed his surroundings. "Tam, sorry about that, but Milady Raisen should be a human and already dead, right? Moreover, I have never heard of a golem with an ego. That's why we are surprised, so please forgive us. After that, please explain who you are. Make it brief."
Ari, this person, even under this situation, you're so conceited.
There was no need to observe anything at all. Rather, he let out a super straight ball. As expected, because of his unexpected reaction, the gigantic golem that called itself Milady showed a perplexed expression. However, it immediately recovered and replied to Hajime and his party with a voice that could simply make one imagine it as someone grinning. If it were human,
Milady-san is a golem-san from the start, you know. To say I was human.
I've read a little about you from Oscar's notes. It's perfectly written that you're a human woman, you know. Rather, I don't want to hear any foolish talk. I already said to make it brief before. Even if you try to obstruct us, what we need to do is still the same. I will turn you into scrap and move on. That's why, before you can't make any more gata-gata sounds, tell us everything.
Oh, because it was my first conversation after a long time. No matter what you say, it makes me dance with joy inside. Rather, did you just say, Oscar? Don't tell me you've conquered Ochan's dungeon?
If it was Oscar Orcus's dungeon, we already conquered it. Rather, it was us who's supposed to do the asking. If you won't talk, then we'll fight, you know? Well, it's not like we need to know anything. Our only objective is the age of God's magic, after all. Hajime turned Donner toward the gigantic golem. Although Yeye showed a clarifying face, Shia said, "Uwa," he didn't shake at all, in half surprise and half amazement while looking at Hajime.
Age of God's magic, you say? Then, as expected, is that for God slaying? Is it to slaughter and destroy those shitty bastards? If you have captured Ochan's dungeon, then you know the situation, right?
Talready said that it was us who's supposed to do the asking. What we want is the answer, so answer our inquiry from before.
This fellow is truly conceited. Well, that's okay. What was it? My identity.
Make it brief. I don't need a long explanation like Oscar's.
Certainly. Ochan's speech was long, and there was too much theory.
The gigantic golem looked up at the ceiling into a far distance, filled with nostalgia. It was truly a golem with human-like movements. Yu gazed at the gigantic golem with her usual expressionlessness, while Shia was restless because of the surrounding golem knights.
I will say it briefly as you want. I am certainly Milady Raisen. All the golem's wonders can be explained with Age of God's magic. If you want to know more, then magnificently try to defeat me. Well, something along those lines.
In the end, there is no explanation.
That was... Before you complete the contest, you won't receive any information, right? Without that, there would be no meaning behind the dungeons, you know?
This time, the gigantic golem, Milady Golem, used her finger as if saying, "Tisk, tisk, tick." Although they didn't know for sure if Milady Raisen was inside of it, if they excluded the character, then the golem had its own charm. Yo boldly muttered, "Its only problem is the inside," having the same impression as Hajime. Finally, about that inside, they still didn't understand anything in the end. If it was truly Milady herself, Hajime guessed it must be some kind of residual thought. Hajime hazily remembered from his memory that his classmate Nakamura Eri was a necromancer, a job that handles residual thoughts. However, with her necromancy, a residual thought that carried a clear intent like this couldn't be formed. In other words, it was still in the boundary to assume that the established intent of the deceased inside the golem was made by Age of Gods magic. Anyway, it was not a magic that could be used to move to other worlds that he was looking for. So Hajime, who was a little disappointed, asked a question to the gigantic golem, "No, milady golem. Your Age of Gods magic, is it something related to residual thoughts? If that's so, there is no reason for me to be here."
That look. Do you have other purposes to get Age of Gods magic? By the way, my Age of God magic is not that. 1-9. I was helped by Raccoon to establish my soul in this body.
Hajime's objective is only to go back to his own world. Because he doesn't understand anything about souls and thoughts, obtaining an Age of the Gods magic that manipulates something like that would be pointless. That said, after he asked about that, Milady's reply didn't match up to his predictions. Even though he didn't know who Raccoon was, it was probably one of the liberators. That person gave Milady Golem Milady's soul before she died and established it inside the golem. Then, what is your Age of God's magic? Depending on your answer, we'll return as we are.
Do you want to know? Do you really want to know?
Once again, Milady asked with a grinning-like voice, and Hajime, who was waiting for her reply, was irritated by it.
If you want to know, answer my question first.
Only on the last few words and her voice changed. Her frivolous atmosphere up till now vanished and she carried seriousness instead. Hajime and his party were a little surprised by the change. Hajime asked back without showing that on his expression. "What is it?"
What's your objective? What do you need Age of Gods magic for?
"I won't forgive any falsehood," was what her tone implied. Even her joking atmosphere totally disappeared when Milady asked that. That was probably this woman's true nature. If you think about it, she even challenged the gods for the sake of the people. That was why she didn't want to entrust her magic to someone with an unknown purpose. It was different from the will in Orcus's image recording. No matter if hundreds of years passed by, she intended to keep waiting deep in the dungeon to ascertain the challenger's purpose. In a way, it could be called torture for her. Even her frivolous attitude was a bluff. The real her is someone who has great patience and will. It could be said that she had a sense of responsibility. Maybe because Yue also thought of her like that. She'd been looking at Milady Golem with a different expression since a while ago. Yue understood well the suffering of someone who was alone in the depths of darkness. That's why, for Milady, who was determined to leave her soul behind in order to stay in the depths of the darkness, she seemed to feel something more than sympathy. Hajime looked straight at Milady Golem's glinting eyes and replied without any falsehood. "My objective is to return to my hometown. I was forced into this world by the ones you call mad gods. I am looking for Age of Gods magic that's capable of transferring people between worlds. I have no intention of defeating the gods in your stead. I don't even have the slightest inclination to risk my life for this world." For a while, Milady Golem quietly stared at Hajime. Then, maybe because she reached something, she gave a little nod. Afterwards, she only muttered, "I see." And in the next moment, her serious atmosphere disappeared as if it was an illusion, and her frivolity returned.
I see. So that's it. You're from a different world. That is problematic for you. Okay, then it's time for battle. Splendidly defeat me and you will obtain the Age of Gods magic.
Although your chain of reasoning was so odd that I lost the meaning of it. Just what's with, "then it's time"? Rather, didn't you hear my words? If your magic isn't transition magic, there will be no meaning, you know. Or are you saying it is transition magic? Milady only fufu let out an unpleasant laugh then. That is, answered with a voice filled with too much emphasis as she prolonged her answer. Her appearance resembled Minon that tried to inform the final answer. Finally, with his irritation reaching its limit, and because it'd be a battle from now on, Hajime took out Orkan and Milady shouted the answer she forestalled.
No, telling.
Die. Without asking any more questions, Hajime fired the rockets from Orkan. Leaving trails of sparks, the storm of destruction flew toward Milady Golem and hit. The violent sound of explosions resounded and shook the room. Smoke rose from that explosion.
Did we do it?
Shia, that was a flag.
Shia, who let out first strike for victory with a joyful look, was succumbed by Yue. The result? It was just as Yue said. From inside the smoke, the burning right hand appeared with a boba sound and dispersed the smoke. When the smoke cleared up, Milady Golem appeared, with some parts of both of her forearms broken. Milady Golem picked up the floating blocks that had drawn near, and they were decomposed to become materials for the parts of her arms that were broken.
Fufu, what a fast preemptive strike. Come, my Age of God's magic might be what you seek after all, but because I am strong, work hard so you won't die.
While laughing joyfully, Milady Golem shot out the flail-type morning star in her left hand toward Hajime and his party. It wasn't thrown. The morning star just suddenly flew with tremendous velocity without any starting movement. Perhaps the gravitational force's direction was adjusted and made it fall, just like the other golems. Hajime and his party avoided the morning star by jumping onto a nearby floating block. The morning star turned the block that Hajime and his party were previously standing on into minute pieces. Then it turned around and returned to Milady Golem's hand. Let's do it, Yue, Shia. Let's destroy Milady.
Affirmative!
Along with Hajime's shout, inside one of the 7 great dungeons, Ryzen Great Dungeon, the last fight began. The golem knights, who raised their large swords in a standby state, began to move as if signaled by Hajime's shout. Just like inside the passage before, they turned toward Hajime and his party and rushed out. Yue took out a water bottle that was clanking with the other bottles and used it to horizontally mow down her enemies. The water that was pressurized to the limit, rather than water cutter it, cut apart the golem knights more like a laser.
You can do it after all, but the enemies are 50 infinitely regenerating knights, and me. I wonder if you can handle all of us at the same time.
While saying that with a sarcastic tone, Milady fired the morning star again. Shia made a big jump and jumped onto the moving pyramid block's upper part. Hajime didn't move from his spot and turned Donner toward the morning star and fired rapidly. There was only one gunshot sound. However, the bullets that fired numbered 6. The attacks were accompanied with a flash aimed only at the approaching morning star, striking it with tremendous velocity. It was indeed a metal ball with huge mass. There was not much change even after it was hit by the railgun 6 times at the same time, but its trajectory deviated away from Hajime by a large margin. At the same time Shia jumped from the upper part of the block to Milady's overhead, she brought down Darukan as she fell.
Already saw that.
Along with those words, Milady Golem suddenly moved to the side at a great velocity. She must be falling to the side.
You!
With her aim off, Shia gritted her teeth and pulled Doryukin's trigger. Then an explosion came out. With the cartridge ejecting from the side, her trajectory was corrected. After spinning 3 times, a blow that carried significant centrifugal force hit Milady Golem. Milady Golem immediately used her left arm to guard. A tremendous sound of impact came from the left hand. However, as if nothing happened, Milady Golem swiped her left hand horizontally. Shia! Shia, who was hit, let out a scream. Somehow she managed to pull Doryukin's trigger and corrected her pose using its explosive power. Additionally, using the recoil, she made an emergency landing on the nearby block. Ha! You can do it after all. Oi, you! Just what kind of training did you make her do? I only drove her into a corner.
I see. It was something like polishing her ability to survive to the maximum.
Hajime used Farsight to confirm Shia, who Pian bounced on the blocks to come back with admiration in his mind. And, on the block Hajime and Yue were on. The golem knights that rushed them was finally could not be held back by Yue alone. Hajime took out Methurai the Gatling gun from treasure box. Then, with his back turned to Yue, he unleashed the monster capable of scattering 12,000 deaths per minute. Its 6 barrels began rotating as he fired it. While letting out sounds particular to this weapon, a lot of flashes flew straight freely all over the room, while the enemies who met the bullets mid-air were turned into scrap and fell to the bottom. Those that sneaked around to the other side to evade an attack from the blind spot by a laser of water were perfectly cut. More than 40 golem knights fell to the bottom of the room in tragic states in no time. After some time, they would likely finish reconstructing and return to the front line. But it was good that they won't be hindrances for a while. That's right, until the time their boss, Milady Golem, is destroyed.
What was that? I have never seen nor heard of anything like that.
Having heard Milady Golem's astonished shout, Hajime put Methurai back into treasure box. Then once again he pulled out Donner and let out a voice that could be heard even by Shia, who was at a distance. Miele's core is at the same place as the heart. Destroy that.
What? How did you know that?
Once more, Milady let out an astonished voice. Surely she didn't know that Hajime has a magic eye that's capable of seeing the flow of magic power. Because the position of the core that could be used to defeat the golem was confirmed, Yue and Shia's eyes became sharp with a glint. Currently, there were around 10 golem knights that still floated. The trio released waves of attacks aimed to hit Milady's heart. Hajime immediately tried to get closer to Milady Golem by jumping using the floating blocks as footholds. With the current output of the railgun, it'd be hard to pierce Milady Golem's gigantic body and hit the core. That's why he decided to shoot at 0 distance to destroy the armor, then pull out a grenade. However, it was not that easy. When he noticed Milady Golem's eyes shine for a moment, blocks were floating from her overhead toward Hajime with tremendous speed.
I never said I can only control the knights.
Ignoring Milady's grinning voice, Hajime immediately, Gashun, operated his artificial arms gimmick. With a sound that could affect the insides of your stomach, an explosive sound rang out and pressure was generated from the back of the artificial arm that was aimed forward. More specifically, it was the discharge of the powerful shotgun. Although acceleration using electromagnetism couldn't be done, the compression ratio of combustion powder was much higher than in Donner. The recoil was also severe because of it. The trajectory of Hajime's body changed mid-air, while the blocks that came flying were dodged. Afterward, he somehow managed to put his feet on the targeted block. Naturally, Milady Golem tried to drop Hajime's foothold, but before she was aware, Shia already approached her from behind, and she jumped to deliver a strong hit on Milady Golem's head. First of all, she wanted to destroy the eyes part on the head that gave off suspicious light. Milady Golem, who noticed Shia was approaching, made the Golem Knights target Shia that was in the middle of her jump. Shia was completely defenseless mid-air, at the moment that she was almost cut by the large swords.
Nin, I won't let you.
This time, it was Yue that had moved before she was aware of it. Using Rupture, she cut the Golem Knights that tried to attack Shia.
As expected of Yue-san!
While saying that, with the trouble gone, Shia continued to advance in the air, and she delivered the attack that was made by strengthening her physical ability to the limit.
Golem won't lose in terms of power.
Milady Golem proved her own words. While turning around, she immediately swung her burning right hand towards Shia. A tremendous roar resounded when Shia's Doryuken and Milady Golem's heat knuckle collided. The surrounding floating blocks were blown away radially by the ensuing shock wave.
Damn you!
Shia, who was unable to penetrate Milady Golem's fist, let out a shout to pull out more of her power. However, just as expected of a golem's physical strength, Shia was shaken off and blown away by the fist.
Kaya!
Shia let out a scream. There was no floating block in the direction she was in. Because she thought Shia would fall at this rate, Yue dashed out from the side and embraced Shia. Using Soar, for just a moment, they corrected their trajectory and landed on the floating block in front of them.
Sail yay, sail yay, sail yay, sail yay, So yeah.
Quite a combination you have there.
With a composed voice, Milady Gollum looked up while Yue and Shia looked down at her. An unexpected voice came out from nearby. Right? Letting out a panicked and surprised voice, Milady Gollum changed the direction of her glance. Before she was aware of him, he had slipped onto her bosom while fixing his location using the anchor and putting his foot into the cracks on the armor. He aimed the large weapon, Schlagen to the heart's part. A bright red spark gushed out from Schlagen.
Since what?
Milady's surprised words were cut off by the roar that came from Schlagen. Having fired a massive killing intent from zero distance, it blew Milady Gollum away and her chest armor was shattered into tiny fragments. Even if Lightning Clad couldn't be used with enough output, the current Schlagen's firepower was the same as Donner's maximum power. Even so, that was enough firepower to destroy metallic armor. Even Gollum Knight's armor could easily be blown apart by the current Donner, so Milady Gollum's armor that's made from the same materials, even if it was a little thicker, could be destroyed using Schlagen. Blown backwards, smoke came from Milady Gollum's chest. Hajime also flew backwards. By shooting the anchor, he turned around mid-air, and with the momentum he landed on a nearby floating block. Then, he observed Milady Gollum's condition. Yue and Shia also jumped to the floating block near Hajime.
Did we do it?
Although there was a response.
With this, I want it to end.
Having heard Yue's response, Shia said her wishful thinking. Hajime's expression was subtle. Although Milady Gollum's chest armor was destroyed, without knowing what had happened, nearby floating blocks started to move, and Hajime and his party could hear a voice that was filled with admiration.
Wow, you're the real deal. That was a close call. If there was no magic power disintegration, that artifact's real power would be very dangerous, you know. Yes, having made this dungeon with great effort, Milady-chan is a genius.
Milady Gollum praised herself. However, her words didn't enter Hajime's ears. Hajime's expression was sharp. That's because there was jet black armor beneath the wrecked chest armor, and he noticed one thing from that. Hajime remembered that armor's material.
And did this interest you?
Milady Gollum noticed Hajime's gaze, and with a grinning voice she pointed at the jet black armor. With the tone of someone important, "This is you know." She tried to explain the armor's identity, but Hajime continued that with a mutter followed by a vulgar word. Azanthium, bastard. Azanthium ore is an ore boasting the trait as the world's hardest ore that even Hajime used in some of his equipment. A thin coating of this ore is even able to endure Donner's maximum power. That's why Schlagen's attack was unable to scratch it. Hajime drew wrinkles on his forehead because it would be hard to destroy that Azanthium armor.
Oh my? You knew of this. Rather, that's a given. You have conquered Okun's dungeon after all, so it was impossible for you to not know how to use creation magic. Now come. Because you had understood your limit and feel hopelessness, let's move on to the second round.
Milady snatched the materials from the smashed floating blocks. When the surface armor was reconstructed, she started to fiercely charge while firing the Morning Star.
What should we do? Hajime-san!
There is still a way. By any means, seal off her movement.
Nin, affirmative.
With the condition where they didn't have enough firepower, Shia, who was shaken, asked Hajime. Hajime still had his last resort. To use it, he issued an order to seal off Milady Gollum's movement. On the other hand, Yue and Shia let out somewhat relieved expressions, and they tried to evade the incoming Morning Star by jumping to the nearby floating blocks. However,
I won't let you.
Along with Milady Gollum's voice, the floating blocks that became their footholds started rotating in high speed. With their footholds rotating, all of a sudden, Hajime and his party lost their balance. Then, the Morning Star crashed into Hajime and his party with its immense power. Hajime and his party abandoned their footholds that had become fine dust. Hajime was clinging to the chain that passed with hara-jahara sounds. Ye used the fragments of the smashed floating blocks along with Soar, while Shia was using the recoil from Doryukin's explosion to somehow manage to make an emergency landing on the floating block before her eyes. Maybe because that was Milady Golem's aim, she thrusted her heat knuckle towards them. Coo! They avoided the direct hit but were affected by the force of it passing by. Groans of anguish were let out from Yue and Shia's mouth. Even so, as if that were something else, Yue aimed at Milady Golem's hand and invoked Rupture, while Shia used Doryukin's gimmick to let out a stake, and with a strike, pierced Milady Golem's armor and clung to it. Rupture was able to cut off part of Milady Golem's right hand, but it couldn't completely sever it, and Yue landed on another floating block with a mortified expression. On the other hand, Shia, who clung to Milady Golem's left shoulder, made a full swing of Doryukin and aimed at Milady's head. However, Milady Golem's sudden use of fall made Shia lose her balance, and she was thrown out in the air.
Kaya!
Shia let out a scream. Over there, Hajime, who clung on to the Morning Star's chain, swung himself, and using the centrifugal force, he jumped and caught Shia in the air.
Hajime-san!
Shia called out Hajime's name with a voice full of joy. It was the rescue by embracing that she yearned for. Although she was aware of the situation they were in, she immediately felt elated. However, there was Hajime's quality. Shia was thrown to the crowd of demonic beasts in front of them.
Hajime-san?
Let's go one more time. With a gashion, he reloaded a shot shell into his artificial arm and then fired it. Using the recoil, Hajime rotated and threw Shia toward Milady Golem, assisted by the centrifugal force.
Damn!
When she thought her desire had been fulfilled, the next moment she was in a situation where she was suicide attacking the enemy. Letting out a roar of desperation, she prepared Doryukin. Even Milady felt that Hajime's actions were cold. However, she was still ready to intercept that. She drew back the heat knuckle behind while clenching its fist. And, in the next moment, suddenly, a big explosion came from the chain that connected to the Morning Star. Miele let out a surprised voice. The cause of the explosion was a large amount of grenades that Hajime attached to the chain. With tremendous explosive power, the chain was blown from the middle section, while the left arm that was wrapped by it was greatly damaged. Because of the impact, Miele Golem's stance was broken. Shia reached her while swinging Doryukin. Along with that shout, she pulled the trigger on the handle, and the shot shell inside burst out. Doryukin approached Milady Golem using the momentum created by the acceleration from the impact that was even able to crush air. Milady Golem was still occupied by the severe damage on her left arm. Immediately, Doryukin hit her left hand. Without mercy, Doryukin pulverized the brittle left arm up to the shoulder. With the momentum used to swing Doryukin, Shia floated in midair. Milady Golem wanted to at least take revenge for her left arm, and she released her heat knuckle at Shia. However, during the time Milady was concentrating on Shia, a laser of water came forth from her lower side, and it precisely cut the part that was previously only partially cut. Afterwards, with the wound opened up and being cut further, Milady Golem's right hand was finally cut off.
I did it!
The one who said that with a smile was, of course, Yue.
You, don't get carried away.
Miele raised a voice filled with irritation. In that moment, Hajime fired the anchor at the floating block overhead and moved in the air like a pendulum, catching Shia, who had fallen. However, it was not a hug, but rather holding her armpit.
Hajime-san, aren't you going to give me a hug as a reward? Please read the mood.
Don't say it as if I was a KY. You who tries to fulfill your desire in such a situation is the one that should read the mood. The moment they landed on the nearby floating block, Shia let out a displeased voice while pouting. Then Hajime tsukomied while amazed by that. Milady, who lost both arms somehow, didn't summon the surrounding blocks to reconstruct her arms. She only looked at the ceiling while her eyes shone strongly. Because of a totally bad premonition, Hajime's expression stiffened. It was also supported by Shia's pale expression.
Hajime-san! Yue-san! Dodge! It'll rain!
Hajime guessed Shia's special magic had perhaps triggered. That means somehow a dangerous situation that could kill someone related to, or Shia herself would occur. He confirmed Yue's location a little ways behind him, with a cursory glance. Then Hajime took a stance to respond to anything that might happen. Immediately, it happened. The entirety of the room rumbled. The low rumbling of earth resounded. Fragments fell from the ceiling. No, they were not fragments. It was the ceiling itself that's falling. Can't handle themselves. 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 Can't handle themselves.
Fa-fa-foo, it's payback. Although I am incapable of controlling multiple things except the knights, if it's only to make them fall, then even I can cause hundreds of them to do so. Show me how you surpass this.
Although there was irritation in Milety's easygoing words, there was no time to notice it. Because the room's walls were made from numerous blocks, that means the ceiling is also made from numerous blocks. One by one, each of those blocks were gigantic with weight surpassing 10 tons. Those things were falling like rain. Cold sweat flowed from Hajime's forehead.
Hajime-san?
Let's join with Yue. Shia let out a trembling voice while being carried, and using the anchor with a pendulum-like movement, they jumped toward Yue's direction. Yue also jumped using the floating blocks as footholds toward them. During that time, Milety Golem kept looking at the ceiling. Perhaps, just as she said, unlike the Golem Knights, she was only able to control one or two things. Therefore, in order to make them fall, she must concentrate to remove hundreds of those gigantic stones from the ceiling. Somehow, when Hajime and his party rejoined, hundreds of gigantic stones simultaneously poured down from the sky. Blocks were coming from the ceiling. Groups of gigantic stones were falling, letting out devastating roars while the room's tremor was stopped. Moreover, she might even be able to adjust the trajectories because they were specifically aimed at the place where Hajime and his party were. Even Milady Golem wouldn't commit a double suicide, so it'd be safe to go under her, and after he took a glance at that, he dashed out with a tremendous speed along the wall. But even if he started now, they wouldn't make it. You, Shia! Hold on tight! Absolutely don't let go!
Yes!
As soon as Hajime heard Yue and Shia, he once again took out Orkan from Treasure Box. Then he rapidly fired 12 rockets at the oncoming gigantic stones. While leaving trails of sparks, they flew towards the death that was coming overhead, and one by one the rockets that came flying at the gigantic stones caused large explosions. Their vision was shrouded. The groups of gigantic stones couldn't be seen, and they let out a little smile because of Orkan's attacks. Finally, they were able to see some of the ceiling. Hajime put Orkan away, then set up Donnerschlag and fired them at the ceiling. He tried to spread the little path of safety they were in, so he continued to precisely break the fragments from the gigantic stones. However, Hajime's interception could only go so far. Finally, groups of gigantic stones that fell with great velocity reached Hajime and his party. Hajime confirmed that Yue and Shia were tightly holding on to him, then moved using his special magic. It was light speed. Hajime's world immediately lost its color. He was able to recognize the falling fragments of death one by one. He passed by the barrage of gigantic stone fragments using the minimum necessary movement. At the same time he spun the guns in his hands and reloaded them, he used concentrated shots at the unavoidable fragments, changing their trajectories. He couldn't waste even a comma. Just like the fight with the Guardian of Orcus' Great Dungeon, where even with the level of perception expansion from light speed that he just awoke to, it still wasn't enough. It was necessary to exceed the limit of concentration. Hajime further used another special magic. It was limit break. Hajime's body was immediately wrapped in red light. But that immediately disappeared. If it was normal, Hajime's physical abilities should have raised by 3 times, but that special magic was nullified by the dungeon's magic power disintegration. Limit break itself was similar to wearing a reinforced exoskeleton made by magic. It was different for physical ability strengthening, which was applied internally. In other words, even with the cancellation of body strengthening, his strengthened and expanded perception effectiveness was not cancelled. Also, to break the limit wasn't something gained for free. The load on his body wasn't something normal. Furthermore, Hajime already strengthened his perception to the limit using light speed. His body would already have been broken if not for the demonic beast's meat that he ate. Actually, because he was still unable to endure it, the capillaries in Hajime's eyeballs showed while he let out a little nosebleed. Yue and Shia were swaying unsteadily when he moved, while clinging to Hajime, who was evading the death that reigned with only small movements. He balanced himself on the footholds that swayed and were violently crushed. Sometimes he made the falling fragments as his foothold. He sharpened his mind, and now he was able to perceive the cracks on the falling rocks one by one. Having passed the limit, he used the area that normally could not be used by humans to find a way to escape death. Milady, who observed Hajime and his party from the wall's side, saw that they were immediately swallowed by the groups of gigantic stones. Although they struggled, they weren't able to surpass those large masses as expected. Then she deactivated Fall with a little disappointment. With their fall stopped, the clusters of gigantic stones were floating along with the blocks. Then the scattered ceiling's wreckage rose.
UN, as expected, it was impossible. But if they couldn't do this much, they wouldn't be able to win against those shitty bastards.
Milady muttered that while searching for the corpses of Hajime and his party. And, at that time, I have no interest in those shitty bastards.
Eh?
She heard a familiar voice. The insolent boy that moved at his own pace, gray-haired with an eye patch and used artifacts she's never seen before. That's right. It was Hajime's voice. Miele turned her head to the back while letting out a shocked voice tinged with a little joy. There was, surely, Hajime, who stood safe and sound on the floating block, with rough breathing and blood flowing from his eye and nose while glaring at Milady.
How?
Because she saw Hajime swallowed by the group of gigantic stones in front of her eyes, Milady could only unintentionally let out a doubting voice in front of him. Having seen that, Hajime's mouth formed a smile. Although it's okay to answer that, is it okay to only focus on me?
Eh?
Milady raised the same doubting voice as before, but that doubt was immediately answered by hits of magic.
Rupture.
Yue's dignified chant resounded, then lasers of water rushed out from behind Milady Golem and hit her back, feet, head, and shoulders. The water cutter tore apart the surface armor of each part.
No matter how many times you do it, it won't be any different. I'll just defeat you after reconstructing my arms.
Well, we won't let you have the time for that. To the Milady Golem that still calmly turned around after receiving Yue's magic, Hajime used the anchor to approach her in a flash. In his other hand was Schlagen.
Ha ha ha! This again? Well, it's impossible to break my Azanthium armor.
Milady was still composed. She thought Hajime, who clung to her, was trying to shoot the chest part, having aimed Schlagen there. She didn't even try to obstruct him using the floating blocks in the surroundings. Well, that was only natural. After all, Hajime's weapon was proven to be unable to stand against Milady Golem's armor. Therefore, because it already reached this stage, he still chose that kind of attack. Milady determined that he was just putting up useless resistance without any more plans behind it. However, her composure proved to be fatal. I already know that. Sparks came from Schlagen along with Hajime's words. He fired the full metal jacket-like thing that was accelerated by electromagnetism towards Milady Golem's chest at zero distance. A great roar and impact were generated while Milady Golem was blown backward. However, Hajime didn't withdraw like last time. He kept clinging, using the anchor, his artificial arm pushed into the Milady Golem's chest that was broken. Once it was inside, he fired the shot shells until they were exhausted. The tremendous impact blew Milady Golem even further, and she was thrown into the floating block behind her.
Even after this, eventually...
Yue! Ignoring Milady's words, Hajime called out Yue's name. Following that, Yue jumped and released her magic.
Be frozen. Ice coffin.
Just as she wished, she pulled the trigger to activate the magic that's originally used to confine objects inside a coffin of ice. However, this ice magic was a high-ranked water magic. Middle-ranked and above magic should be unusable in this area. Even so, this magic was necessary to restrain Milady Golem. The ceiling blocks that she threw along with the back of Milady Golem were frozen immediately. Then the floating block was at a standstill.
What? How did high-ranked magic?
Milady raised a shocked voice. It was a simple story on how Yue was able to use high-ranked ice magic. Just like Rupture, by preparing the water beforehand, she was able to reduce the consumption of magic power. That's why beforehand, water was scattered on the blocks that Milady was thrown to. Also, water was also scattered on the back of the composed Milady Golem. That was the objective of the previous Rupture. Even so, it still consumed enormous magic power. Yue used up all of the magic power that she stocked inside the magic crystallization stone. Yue evacuated on the nearby floating block while panting. You did it, yeah. Standing on Milady Golem's chest, Hajime took out his last resort from treasure box. What appeared from the void was a large elongated cylinder with a length of 2.5 meters. A lot of mechanisms were installed outside, while inside a jet black stake with a diameter of 20 centimeters was loaded. On the lower side, 4 sturdy arms were installed, and it began to synchronize with the mechanisms inside Hajime's artificial arm. Just like that, Hajime inserted the arms right above the unmoving Milady Golem and fired the anchors that were installed on its outer casing. 6 arms deeply pierced the surface and firmly fixed the large cylinder in place. At the same time, Hajime poured his magic power into it. Then, the large cylinder let out red sparks. The jet black stake that was loaded inside began to strongly rotate. The melody coming from the high-speed rotation echoed. Hajime was grinning. If not for having a golem's body, Milady's expression would surely seem cramped. This atrocious form was the artificial arm's attachable weapon called Pile Bunker. Using compression transmutation, 4 tons were compressed into a stake with a diameter of 20 centimeters and length of 1.2 meters, and its surface was coated with a xanthium ore. It was the heaviest and hardest stake in this world. It was shot out using a large amount of combustion powder that was compressed and electromagnetic acceleration that was set on the upper part of the large cylinder. Take it with all your might and die. Accompanied by those words, as if driving a stake into a vampire, the jet black stake struck Milady Golem's core. The pile bunker activated, accompanied with a terrific impacting sound. The jet black stake pierced through Milady Golem's absolute defense. The xanthium armor on the chest was immediately cracked, and the stake buried itself into it without mercy. Because of the impact, Milady Golem's body sank and created a radial crack on the floating block. The floating block immediately descended. From Milady Golem, white smoke was rising from the chest part because of the friction from high-speed rotation. However, the light didn't disappear from Milady Golem's eyes.
Ha ha! Apparently its power is still insufficient. But, well, isn't it the real deal? I wonder, did it pierce 3/4 of the armor?
Somewhat. Her voice was stiff, but Milady still kept her composure. She secretly drenched in cold sweat. Although the pile bunker was a certain kill weapon, because of insufficient electromagnetic acceleration, its real power couldn't be shown. Therefore, it was disappointingly unable to fully penetrate the defense. However, Hajime's eyes didn't show any resignation. It was as if he already took it into account. Do it, Shia. Hajime put everything away into treasure box except the stake. Then he quickly jumped away from Milady Golem's chest. What appeared instead of him was Shia with rabbit ears blown by the wind, and Doryukin in an upper stance, while she fell from far above. Milady had probably guessed what Shia tried to do. This time, Milady Golem tried to hurriedly get away. When she realized, with Shia's current speed, even if she moved the floating block now, she wouldn't make it in time, she gave up and stopped moving. Shia, using the force from the shot shell, brought down a blow with all of her might into the stake. The stake sank further, accompanied with a great roar. However, it was still unable to fully penetrate the armor. Shia decided to attack using all of the remaining shot shells. Then, she pulled the trigger. Shia's shout rang out. She decided to show all of her will and pour it into the sledgehammer that was her partner. With all of her might and will, she let out all of her power. Together with the attack, the floating block was greatly pushed downwards by the impact. Finally, with a roar, the floating block crashed onto the ground. The jet black stake penetrated the absolute defense of Azanthium with the last attack and reached Milady Golem's core. Although it was just the tip, but bishy, the core was cracked along with that sound. When it crashed into the ground, Shia used Doryukin as the starting point, and with one hand she somersaulted. Then, with all of the body's strengthening power directed to her leg, the kick that carried enough centrifugal force was used to drive in the stake. Having received Shia's kick, the stake was immediately pushed deeper into the core and expanded the cracks until finally it was completely crushed. The light in Milady Golem's eyes disappeared. Having confirmed that, Shia gradually loosened her power and let out a sigh of relief. Immediately, Shia heard landing sounds behind her. There was Hajime and Ye as expected. Shia turned toward the two with a smile that sums up everything. Hajime and Ye also let out smiles that sums up everything. One of 7 great dungeons, Raisin Great Dungeon's last trial, was certainly over. Dust drifted in their vicinity and numerous cracks were carved on the ground. On the floating block that had crashed was a large crater, and on top of that laid a gigantic golem with a jet black stake sprouting from its chest area. On top of Milady Golem, Shia let out Zeha Zeha, gasping breaths while being supported by Doryukin. Hajime narrowed his eyes in admiration, while Yue looked at her with gentle eyes. You did it, Shia. The ending was filled with great vigor. It made me think better of you, right?
You've worked hard.
Thank you very much. But, Hajime-san, it's okay if you put I've fallen for you instead, you know?
From the beginning, I would never fall for you. Even with her exhausted appearance, Hajime and Yue's praise made Shia feel shy. Actually, until just recently, she didn't think anything about battle. She only single-mindedly wanted to stand on the same stage as Hajime and Yue and to always be together with them. Those were Shia's wishes. With those deep and strong wishes, Shia faced one of the 7 great dungeons trial with her potential, and it resulted in her delivering the finishing blow. Even for Hajime, the last scene where Shia delivered the finishing blow was something he had predicted. Because he expected the pile bunker's power to be insufficient, he already had other means to drive it in. However, although the Rabbit Man tribe was gentle and not good in combat, Shia never whined, saying, I want to go back, while she fought, but surely she must have felt anxious and scared entering the depths of a great dungeon. That's why he thought to leave the finishing blow to Shia. The result was magnificent. She delivered the last attack with great vigor. It was so splendidly done that it even made Hajime praise her. Shia's desire to become strong surely reached him. Even so, Hajime's feelings did not reach the level Shia wished for. But her perseverance and willpower certainly made him feel their bonds. That's why Hajime gazed at Shia with gentle eyes.
Phew! So, somehow, Hajime-san is looking at me with such gentle eyes. Is it a dream?
You know? No, well, although it can't be helped when I think about how you were usually treated. Because the way Hajime gazed at her was unbelievable. Shia pinched her own cheek. Although Hajime wanted to complain about her reaction, once he thought of how she was treated until now, he could only think it was the natural reaction. Yue Tokotoko approached Shia, who was still pinching her cheek. Then, Shia's clothes were pulled to make her bend down, and her head was patted slowly. Her disordered hair was fixed, slowly and gently.
Yo-san?
Can see Hajime won't pat you, although it's regrettable I'll do it instead. You did well.
I wonder why. Somehow I can't stop crying. Wait.
Nin, good girl, good girl.
At first, Shia was confused by Yue's sudden actions, but when she understood she was being praised, as if the string of tension was cut, Shia began to weep and immediately hugged Yue. As expected, she was trying to endure herself with her first journey suddenly becoming against the 7 great dungeons. That's because she was determined to go together with Hajime and Yue. To be praised and acknowledged, she couldn't stop her tears because of the relief. By the way, Hajime surely wouldn't pat her, as Yua said. Shia was the type that easily got carried away. If Hajime awkwardly patted her, it would result in troublesome things like Shia misunderstanding his feelings as love. This time, although Shia would be treated comparatively better by Hajime, there was no reason for multiple people to have the same feelings as Yue. That was her special feeling. More or less, Hajime never considered how Yue would be saddened by that. Moreover, Fui-in. There was a happy cry from Yu's chest. It was Shia crying out of relief while being spoiled. That's why, when Yu, who patting and looking at her with gentle eyes, was seen, well, somehow the future could be predicted. Yu was spoiling Shia while embracing her, and Hajime watched this with an indescribable expression. While that happened to the trio, suddenly, a voice rang out.
Although it's such a good atmosphere, it's about to get dangerous for me. So can I have some of your time?
It was a truly familiar voice. Hajime and his party let out, "Ha!" then looked at Milady Golem. Unbeknownst to them, the light in her eyes that was previously gone has returned. Immediately, Hajime and his party jumped back to put their distance. Because they were certain that her core was destroyed, they could only take stances with wariness in their minds.
Wait a sec. It's okay. The trial was cleared. It's your victory. Because there is some power left inside the core's fragments, I wanted some time to talk. It'll only take a few minutes.
As if to prove those words, Milady Golem was completely unmoving, while the lights in her eyes parts were repeatedly blinking. It seemed to disappear at any moment. That's why it must have been true when she said she only needed a few minutes. Hajime relaxed his mind and continued to talk to Milady Golem. So, what is it? Undead? To be incapable of reading the mood even after death. Although it's regrettable for the future, Liberators, maybe I should help you pass on.
Wah. Stop it. What's with that obvious harassment? That was completely unpleasant.
Well, I won't hear anything about killing those shitty bastards, you know? Toward Hajime's authoritative speech, Milady somehow gave out an atmosphere as if she wryly smiled.
I won't say that. That's not necessary after all. What I want to talk about is more like advice. Even if there is no Age of Gods magic that you're looking for in the dungeons you visit, try to obtain all of the Age of Gods magics, because they are necessary for your wish.
Maybe because Milady's power was almost exhausted, her words gradually became blurred and more intermittent. But, without worrying about that, Hajime told her his problem. All of them, huh? Then tell us the locations of the other dungeons. Because they were lost in legend, I truly don't know any more of it.
Ah, there's that. I see. The other dungeons' locations are unknown. It's been a long time after all. The locations are.
Gradually, Milady Golem started to lose the power in her voice. Toward her voice that somehow contained sentimentality, Yue and Shia wore serious expressions. After a long time for her duty, rather for the sake of her wish. To have put her soul inside a vessel was an act that made them stare at her with respect. Milady slowly talked about the whereabouts of the remaining 7 great dungeons. Inside her words was a place that seemed to surprise them.
That's all. Good luck.
N. You've become completely modest. What happened to those annoying lines and that infuriating tone? Just as Hajime said, the current Milady gave out an atmosphere as if she had no relation to the Milady that prepared those annoying sentences inside this dungeon with a completely different tone, filled with sincerity and seriousness. She had also displayed it before the fight when she wanted to hear Hajime's objectives. This was probably her real self. It was as if there was no more need to hide it before she completely disappeared.
I am sorry, but those shitty bastards were truly unpleasant fellows. They only say unpleasant things, that's why, even just a little, I want you to get accustomed to it.
Oi, you. I already said I won't defeat the gods. That's why, don't say it as if I'll fight against those guys.
Toward Hajime's unpleased voice, Milady replied with unexpected conviction and seriousness.
Nen, you'll surely fight them, as long as you are you. For sure you'll kill those gods.
I don't understand what you mean. Well, if they try to obstruct my path, then it can't be helped. Hajime was somewhat perplexed. Milady, who had seen his appearance, let out a joyful laugh.
Foo-foo, that's good. It's okay, as long as you live like that. Your choice will surely be the best for this world.
Afterwards, Milady Golem's body was wrapped in a pale light and glowed, as if it became fireflies. The light separated into smaller lights and ascended towards heaven. It was similar to how a dead soul ascends to heaven. A very, very mysterious scene. During that time, Yue slowly approached Milady Golem. Then, she stared at those lights.
What is it?
Came Milady's whispery voice. Similarly, Yue whispered words, a present for a great liberator that was about to disappear.
Thanks for your hard work. You did well.
Those were words of appreciation. For her alone, a great existence that kept waiting for hope at the bottom of darkness, a small present from the one still alive. Normally, they might be improper words that came from a younger person, but, as expected, those unexpected words were the only ones that came to Yue's mind. Those words might also be unexpected for Milady. Without saying anything, her blank surprise could be felt. Before long, Milady muttered in a soft voice.
Thanks.
By the way, behind Yue and Milady, who were exchanging words, Hajime spoke with an irritated tone. That's enough already. So quickly disappear. While Shia, who heard that, said, "Who's the one incapable of reading the mood now? Please just be quiet for now," and covered his mouth. Fortunately, the other two didn't notice, so their solemn atmosphere was preserved.
Well then, it's time. From now on, you should freely do what you want.
Those words that were similar to Oscar's were presented to Hajime and his party. One of the liberators, Milady, became fleeting lights and disappeared into heaven. Silence wrapped their vicinity. Yue and Shia followed the trail of lights as it went to heaven, while soaked in reverberation.
In the beginning, I thought she was someone with the worst character. But it was just her trying her best.
Yue and Shia exchanged those words in the quiet atmosphere. However, there was a man that didn't think of Milady like they did. Hajime talked to the two with a fed-up expression. "Ha, isn't it enough? It's about time we moved on. Also, did you really think that fellow's mischievousness a lie? That kind of mischievousness isn't at the level of an act."
Wait, Hajime-san. To say that about the dead, that's cruel. Hajime-san truly can't read the mood.
Hajime? Kentucky?
You. Even for you. Ha. Well, that's okay. But for your information, it's not like I can't read the mood. I just don't want to. While they were talking, Hajime and his party didn't notice a light shoot out from a corner of the wall. When they noticed, they moved toward it. They jumped onto the floating block on the upper part of the wall, so the trio jumped onto the same block. Then, when they landed, the floating block that served as their foothold, Shai, started to move. It carried Hajime and his party toward the shining wall.
Whoa! This thing suddenly moved. How convenient.
Service?
Because the floating block suddenly transported Hajime and his party, Shia was surprised while Yue tilted her head in doubt. Somehow Hajime wore an unpleased expression. They advanced toward the shining wall in 10 seconds and completely stopped 5 meters in front of it. Following that, the shining wall, as if waiting for that timing, started to lose its radiance. With a soo sound, the part of the wall that was still shining started to split. In its place, a passage with glossy white walls appeared. The floating block Hajime and his party were on advanced into the passage. Apparently, they were going into Milady Risena's dwelling. After advancing for a while, just like the door leading to Oscar's dwelling inside Orcus' great dungeon, there was a wall with the same 7 distinct patterns engraved on them. Hajime and his party approached the door, and, As if the wall was waiting for that exact timing, the wall slid to the sides and they advanced towards the interior. The floating block was advancing without stopping towards the wall on the other side. Slipping through from the wall on the other side was...
Yaho, short time no see. It's Milady-chan.
a small Milady golem. Come on, look. I already knew this might happen. Yue and Shia were speechless. Hajime, who already expected this, showed a fed-up expression. Hajime was able to expect this because he saw through that both the frivolous Milady and the serious Milady were the real her. Those annoying sentences and unpleasant traps were not at a level a truly serious person could conceive. Also, Milady chose to leave her own soul to test the challengers herself. That's why it was impossible for her to pass on after being defeated just once by a challenger. If that truly happened, the last trial would be gone after just one clearing. Because of that, Hajime expected that Milady herself wouldn't disappear even after Milady Golem was destroyed. His expectations became conviction when the floating block started to move to guide Hajime and his party. After all, Milady was the only one that could move the floating block. Toward Yue and Shia, who were looking down silently, Milady talked to them with a very casual tone.
Ari? Isn't the tension too low? It's okay to be more surprised, you know? Is it that you're so surprised that you can't say anything? If that's so, then my surprise is a big success.
The small Milady golem was designed to be more human-like compared to the gigantic one. It had a slender body clad in a milk-white long robe while wearing a white mask. Its Nico-chan mark was slightly irritating. Along with Milady's words that ended with Kira, a twinkling star, she came in front of Hajime and his party. Even now, Yue and Shia looked down, their expressions hidden behind their bangs. Because he could read the development that might happen next, Hajime took a step back. It wasn't known if it came from Yue or Shia, but a question was muttered.
Before? A while ago? Did you really think I was gone? No way, that's impossible!
But didn't you disappear into the light?
Foo, isn't that well prepared? That production of play. Oh my, Milady-chan truly has talent as an actress. What a frightening woman.
Mini Milady's tension rolled up. It shot up in proportion with their annoyance. In front of that Mini Milady, Yue thrust out her hand while Shia prepared Doyukin. As expected, Mini Milady stopped moving while thinking. Did I overdo it? Towards Yue and Shia, who were swaying as they approached her, Mini Milady moved her head kakukaku in hesitation, then said the words she had decided in her mind.
Teehee, Peril, please die.
Wait! Please wait! This body is weak. It'll be truly bad if you destroy it. Please calm down. I will apologize.
For a while, dotabata dokanbaki, sounds of destruction, and iya, a scream could be heard. Hajime, who ignored those sounds, was observing the room. The room was white all over. There was nothing except a magic circle that was carved on the floor in the center of the room. The other one was a door-like thing on one part of the wall. Hajime guessed that Milady's dwelling was on the other side of it. Hajime slowly approached the magic circle, then arbitrarily examined it. Mini Milady saw that and panicked while drawing near Hajime. From behind her, the expressionless vampire princess and rabbit ears approached while making do-do-do sound effects.
It's not good to examine it without permission. Rather, they are your companions. Please don't just ignore them. Stop them.
While saying those complaints, Mini Milady hid behind Hajime and made him into a shield against the devil duo.
Hajime, please move aside. I won't kill her. Please stand back, Hajime-san. I will kill her. Here and now.
Surely. I never thought of hearing those materials at this timing. Rather, stop playing around and do it already. Hajime gave his advice with a somewhat amazed expression at Shia and Yue's softness. Behind him, Mini Milady said, That's right, do it seriously, only to get iron-clawed by his artificial arm. He ignored the Nico-chan mark that was distorted into a bitter expression. Just as it is, he put more power and makey sounds of something cracking came from Mini Milady's head. It would become an unpleasant design if this keeps up, so hand over the Age of Gods magic already.
Did you notice your speech and behavior are villain-like? Vertical bar, mecky, vertical bar, affirmative. I'll immediately hand it over. That's why, stop. I truly will break if this keeps up.
Maybe because their bitterness had decreased having seen Mini Milady being capable of little more than flailing around, Yue and Xia regained their composure. Mini Milady, who understood that she truly would be destroyed if she kept joking around, finally began to activate the magic circle. Hejime and his party entered the magic circle. This time, because Milady herself knew they cleared the trial, there was no need to search their memories like that time in the Orcus Great Dungeon, and the information and how to use the Age of Gods magic were directly carved into their brains. Although Hejime and Yue, who already experienced this, didn't show any reaction, Xia, who experienced this for the first time, Bikun, jumped. The carving ended after a few seconds. Hajime and his party easily obtained Milady Raisen's Age of Gods magic. This is magic to manipulate gravity as expected.
That's right. Milady-chan's magic is gravity magic. Use it well, is what I wanted to say, but you and that Usagi-chan don't have the aptitude. It was at a level that even I was surprised by it.
How noisy. I have understood that much. Just as Mini Milady said, Hajime and Xia, who had the information of gravity magic carved into their brain, were unable to fully use it. It's the same case as how Yue is only able to use a little of creation magic. It was a matter of aptitude.
Well, Usagi-chan should be able to use it if it's only to adjust weight. For you, because you can use creation magic, just do something about it yourself. Blanc-chan alone has the aptitude. With training, you can master how to use it.
Having heard Mini Milady's somewhat serious explanation, Hajime could only shrug his shoulders, while Yue was nodding and Xia was broken-hearted. It was because she was judged to have no aptitude for the Age of Gods magic that she had finally obtained. She could only use it to adjust her weight. She was truly disappointed. Moreover, it was out of question to make herself heavier, but there was also a problem to make herself lighter. If she was negligent, it would only make her figure bad. Rather, burdened by the demerits, Xia could only feel depressed. Having cast a skeptical gaze toward the depressed Xia, Hajime immediately made further demands. There was no need to be reserved at all. Oi, milady, pass us the proof already. Then, give me all of your convenient artifacts and all of the unusual materials you have, such as the induction stone.
Aren't your lines completely the same as a robber's? Are you aware of it?
From the distorted Nico-chan mark mask, a glare could be felt, but Hajime ignored that. Mini Milady pulled out a ring after rustling her chest pocket, then threw it toward Hajime. Hajime received it with a pashi sound. Raisen's ring had a design of upper and lower ellipses with a stake piercing them. Mini Milady immediately made a large amount of ores appear from empty space. She probably had a treasure box. The ores that were taken out was kept inside of it. Having seen that she obediently took them out, she probably had already decided to hand them over beforehand. That's because Milady was convinced Hajime would fight those mad gods. That's why she wouldn't mind cooperation of this level. However, to not be satisfied by this much was Hajime's quality. After putting away all of the minerals inside his own treasure box, Hajime turned cold eyes toward Mini Milady. Oi, isn't that treasure box? If so, hand that over too. There are probably some artifacts inside.
Oh, oi you! I won't hand over any more than this. The treasure box and the other artifacts are necessary to maintain the dungeon.
As if I'd care. Hand them over.
Ah! Oi! I said no!
Because Hajime truly tried to snatch it away, Mini Milady retreated with an impatient expression. All of the artifacts that she owns were things necessary for the dungeon. Rather, they were only useful for that, so they were no use for Hajime to have them. Having heard that explanation, Hajime, ho ho, I see, then hand those over. said that demand without any mercy. No matter how it was seen, it was a robbery.
I already said I won't hand them. Moose, go back already.
Currently toward Hajime that impatiently approached, Mini Milady turned on her heel with all of her might and ran toward the wall. Then elevating the floating block, she moved into the ceiling. Don't escape. For me, I just want to get the rewards for conquering the dungeon. That's a legitimate demand from me.
Having the nerve to say that, please do something about your sense of value. To make me say something that O-chan usually said.
By the way, my sense of value was cultivated inside that O-chan's dungeon.
O-cha,
While she continued looking at Hajime with a shocked expression, Yue and Shia, who still held a grudge after being toyed with, entered the fray. They narrowly encircled Milady. Although half of it was because she reaped what she had sown, Milady felt the other half was her former comrade's fault for making this dungeon.
To have these abnormals as my first challengers. Mao, no more. I will send you outside by force. Don't come again.
In front of Hajime and his party, who seemed to jump out at any time, Mini Milady grasped the string that, unbeknownst to them, hung down from the ceiling. Then Gui pulled it. For a moment, Hajime and his party let out expressions wondering what she was doing. But an unpleasant sound they've already heard before could be heard by their ears. That's right. It was the sound of an activated trap. At the moment, the sound rang out, accompanied with a roar. Water gushed out of the four walls with tremendous velocity. A large amount of water gushed out like a flash flood, not from the front but diagonally above, and the room was filled in no time with a rapid current. At the same time, the magic circle in the center of the room sunk like an antlion's nest. There was a hole in the center of it. The rapid current rushed toward the hole. You! This is... Hajime, who had noticed something, stiffened for a moment. He instantly wore a distorted expression filled with humiliation. A white room with a hole in the middle of it. Also a large amount of water whirled and flowed into it. That's right, this was just like a toilet.
Unpleasant things should be flushed.
Mini Milady gave out a wink. Yue immediately tried using magic to jump up. Because there was an Age of Gods magic circle, there was no magic power disintegration. That's why, even with only a little amount of magic power left, Yue could use magic to help everyone escape the rapid current.
So...
I won't let you...
However, the moment before Yue said soar to activate the magic, Mini Milady thrust out her right hand. At the same time, an extraordinary pressure attacked Hajime and his party. They sunk inside the rapid current as if being pressed by something gigantic. She was probably using gravity magic to multiply the gravity several times.
See ya! Good luck on conquering the other dungeons.
Go, Po. You, did you think we are filth? Someday I'll surely destroy you.
Keyhole. Unforgivable. Now you've done it! Fuka.
Hajime and his party let out sharp parting remarks, then were swept by the rapid current into the hole. A moment before they entered the hole, only Hajime tried to retaliate by throwing something. Along with Hajime and his party that were flushed into the hole, the water flowed out at the same speed. Then the floor returned and the room regained its former form.
Foo! What strong fellows. Even so, a synergist master just like O-chan He. Foo! Somehow it feels like destiny. Keep struggling for your wish. Well then, I'll be busy for a while to repair the dungeon and the golems. What was that?
Even without the ability to sweat, Mini Milady made a gesture of wiping her forehead. After that, she discovered an object that she was not used to seeing at the edge of her field of vision. A knife was pierced into the wall and a black object hanging from it. What is it? As she approached, having recalled it, she finally realized.
This is... Don't tell me!
A black object. It was Hajime's handmade grenade. It was the only form of retaliation that he could have done, throwing a knife with a grenade attached, just before being flushed into the hole. Because he had used it many times inside the dungeon, Milady already judged that it was an explosive. She immediately floated to take refuge in a hurry. Actually, the current mini Milady had bad magic power consumption when using gravity magic. She already spent most of it bringing them down. That's why she was unable to hold down the explosion. Although Mini Milady Wata Wata turned her heels, it was too slow. At the moment Mini Milady turned her heels, the white room was filled with a flash and followed by an intense impact. Inside the dungeon, Hainya! A woman's scream resounded. Afterwards, there was a small golem that was seriously in need of repair, weeping, or there wasn't, was there? On the other side, Hajime and his party that got flushed like filth were swept into the tunnel-like place by the rapid current at tremendous speed. It wasn't a place where you could breathe either, so they could only advance while submerged in the water. Somehow, although unskillfully, they desperately tried to control their bodies so they wouldn't crash into the wall and lose consciousness. Then, at that time, in the view of Hajime and his party, many shadows passed them by. Those were fishes. It seemed the place they were swept into was an underground vein that connected to rivers and lakes. However, unlike Hajime and his party who were washed away, the fishes were boldly swimming inside the rapid current and came to pass them by. Unbeknownst to them, one of the fishes swam beside Shia's face, who had stopped her desperation to breathe. Somehow, that fish looked toward Shia. There were eyes. The human-faced fish had old man-like eyes. Because it probably didn't know how to speak, it didn't say anything. In conclusion, Shia met the eyes of the human-faced fish. The old man-like face of the human-faced fish displayed impudence and lethargic feelings. It was reminiscent of the nostalgic Shima. Shia, who was surprised, opened her eyes wide. She panically tried to cover her mouth with her hands after unintentionally letting out her breath. However, she was so surprised she didn't avert her gaze. Shia and the old man, fish, continued to advance inside the rapid current while staring at each other. And the flow of time that seemed to continue forever between Shia and the old man, fish, was abruptly ended. A voice resounded inside Shia's head.
Just what are you looking at?
That was added with a click of the tongue. This time Shia was unable to endure any longer. Inside the water Bufoa, she grandly exhaled. Certainly the old man, fish, might be a kind of demonic beast. It probably had the special magic similar to telepathy. But without being able to confirm it, the old man, fish, started to swim through the rapid current and went ahead with surprising agility. What it left behind was a rabbit-eared girl who lost her power while displaying the whites of her eyes. From town to town, a carriage and several horses advanced peacefully on the highway that connected villages with paka-paka, rhythmical footsteps. Certainly, there were people riding on the horses. There were 3 men and a woman who were dressed as adventurers. On the carriage, sitting on the coach seat, was a 1516-year-old girl and a monster, a giant she-male.
Sada-chan, because we'll reach a spring soon. Let's rest a little there. Affirmative. Christabel-san.
The she-male called Christabel was the manager of a dress store in Brooktown who you and Shia were indebted to. Also, the girl that sat beside Christabel was the inn girl of Masaka Inn, Suna Masaka. Although for some reason her name is always able to surprise anyone, she is only a normal girl who has a lot of curiosity and too much pink elements in her brain. These two were currently returning to Brooktown from a neighboring town, escorted by adventurers. Because it could be understood that Christabel was as strong as an oni, it harvests a lot of clothing materials by itself. To get all of the materials at the same time, it left the town. Soda was taking advantage of it. Hearing that a relative in the neighboring town was injured, she represented her parents who were unable to leave the inn to deliver a get-well gift. The adventurers originally came from Brooktown. Having finished their job, they incidentally became their escorts. There was only 1 day of traveling left until they returned to Brooktown. Christabel and the others decided to rest at the spring on the side of the highway at noon. Christabel and the others who had arrived at the spring were preparing to have lunch on the spring's levee after letting the horses drink the water. Sauna, who wanted to get some water, approached the side of the spring. Then, the moment she scooped the water by dipping the container in the spring, Those sounds suddenly rang out, then bubbles suddenly started spouting from the center of the spring.
Kia! It's Sauna-chan!
Sauna raised a scream and fell on her butt. Christabel immediately carried her in one arm and returned to where the adventurers were. Even at that time, the bubbles that spouted out became more intense, until finally a water column with a height more than 10 meters appeared. This spring was commonly known as a resting place along the highway, and this kind of phenomenon had never once been reported. Therefore, Christabel, Suna, and the adventurers could only open their mouths in surprise while blankly staring at that, without being affected by the rain-like drops of water. They only looked at the huge water column. Following that,
Duh! Nah.
from the water that spouted out without losing momentum, 3 people, the screams of 2 people, could be heard as they came out. Spontaneously, "What the?" said Christabel and the others, with their eyes popping out. The trio of humans that came out were blown off 10 meters above while screaming, and just as it is, they were thrown to the opposite side of Christabel and the others, and Daban fell while making that sound.
What on earth happens?
The adventurers and Christabel were speechless. Sauna's mutters represented everyone's feelings. Giu, Deshka, that was awful. I will surely destroy that guy next time. Yay, Shia, are you okay?
Kihoki. I am okay.
Having somehow managed to get into the water's surface, Hajime confirmed Yue and Shia's safety after cursing. However, only Yue replied to him. Shia? Oi, Shia, answer me!
Nin, where are you?
Even as they called out to her, there was no sign of her in the surroundings. Hajime hurriedly dived underwater to search for her. Then, as he thought, Shia had sunk to the bottom. Having lost her consciousness, she was unable to float because of Doryukin's weight. Hajime took out a compressed super-heavy mineral from Treasure Box and used it as a weight replacement to immediately dive. Then he carried Shia up. He went to shore while dragging Shia. Shia was laid upside down, her face was pale with the whites of her eyes showing, while her breathing and pulse stopped. Maybe because she saw something unpleasant, she had lost consciousness with her face looking like it had a cramp. Yue, do CPR!
None. C minus what?
A minus, like I said, secure her breathing. Having seen Shia's condition, he told Yue to do CPR, but Yue only had question_mark floating overhead. In this world, there was probably no such thing as CPR. Because there was no wound, drinking the holy water wouldn't help, and would just hydrate her even more. Yue was weak at healing magic. She couldn't possibly know any magic that was capable of making Shia let out water or to pinpoint massage her heart. Although the exact moment when she lost her consciousness wasn't known, there was no time to argue. Hajime, with grim determination, performed CPR to the unconscious Shia. And naturally, well, there was mouth to mouth. Yue, who saw that, immediately became displeased. But because she understood that was the only way to save Shia, she could only quietly watch. That's right, she only G stared at him. Hajime tried to ignore Yue's inorganic gaze with all his might and repeatedly performed CPR. Geez, when I think back, to be dying right after everything is over, you're truly a regrettable fellow. In his mind, he let out those abusive words, and after doing artificial respiration for who knows how many times, Shia finally vomited water. Hajime turned her sideways so the water wouldn't block the trachea. It was a situation where he completely covered her body.
Keiho, Hajime-san?
Oh, it is Hajime-san. Geez, don't die because of something. While continuing to display an amazed expression near Shia, who was laid down and choking, Hajime showed a somewhat relieved expression. Shia, who could only blankly look at Hajime, suddenly, gabacho, kissed him as she embraced him. It was an unexpected action, so Hajime, who was close to her, failed to avoid it. Just.
Me. Chew.
Shia held Hajime's head with both her hands, wrapping her legs on Hajime's waist to keep a hold on him, and without any reservation her tongue invaded his mouth. Hajime was unable to shake off Shia, who used her Herculean strength to hold him. To tell the truth, during the many repeated artificial respirations, Shia somehow knew she was kissed by Hajime. Although she was unable to move her body, her consciousness had already returned. It was probably a situation brought by her using body strengthening the moment she drowned. Having kissed many times, Shia's feeling-o-meter was blown off. To not let him escape, she completely held Hajime's body, then losing herself, she returned Hajime's kiss. On the other side, Yue, who saw such a spectacle, was perplexed and displeased. Although she was displeased by it, she didn't try to stop it. She whispered, only this time, as a reward, in small mutters. Apparently, she took Shia's feelings into consideration and seemed to allow it as her reward for working hard inside the dungeon.
What? What's with this situation? Amazingly wet while entangled with each other, so intense even though it's outside. How abnormal.
That was the conclusion that came from the excessive delusions of Sona-chan, the inn-girl. Following that, Ara? Certainly you are. Christabel tried to remember you and Shia while wriggling its body. Then, with flames of envy inside their eyes, the male adventurers desperately tried to control themselves from drawing their swords, while the female adventurer looked at them with cold eyes. Now, with Shia stuck to him, Hajime lifted his body up. Then, he intensely grasped Shia's plump butt. Shia unintentionally let out a gasp, and the next moment, without loosening his grasp, Hajime pulled and peeled Shia off, then threw her into the spring just like that.
Yukeya!
Looking at Shia being dropped into the spring while screaming with a skeptical gaze, Hajime fixed his hair while breathing roughly. There is no time to be careless at all. Attacking right after resuscitation, even I can't read that move. Toward Shia, who was immediately crawling out from the spring like Sadako, Hajime displayed an expression as if he was shivering.
Oh, that was cruel. Even though Hajime-san also did that.
Ha? That was just a life-saving action. Rather, were you already conscious that time?
UN. Although I could only feel it, I somehow knew what happened. For me to be kissed by Hajime-san. Haha.
Stop that laugh. Listen, in the end, that was a life-saving action. There is no other meaning, you know? Don't expect anything weird, okay?
Is that so? But a kiss is a kiss. The time for dear will come faster if this keeps up.
Never. Rather, you. Help me stop her.
Only this time? But because Shia had worked hard? No, but...
You, San?
Yeah.
Toward you, who kept looking at an empty space while continuing her murmurs, Hajime was only able to let out a sigh while thinking, this one is also hopeless. Then, he looked toward Christabel and the others that had come near to check on Hajime and his party. His gaze moved from the adventurers. It stopped for a moment toward Suna. Then, when he saw Christabel, he returned his gaze toward Suna. It seemed he preferred to not see that. Having been gazed at by Hajime, Sona's body twitched, then shook, and her face immediately blushed.
So, sorry for the interruption. Please don't worry about us and continue.
Christabel picked Sauna up by the scruff of her neck, who tried to turn her heels after saying those words. Then, they came straight toward Hajime and his party as it is. Because of the monster approaching them, Hajime tried to pull out Donner, but Shia next to him said, "Ah, Manager-san," with a tone as if they were acquaintances, and they continued talking. As a result, their current location turned out to be 1 day away. From Brooktown, Hajime and his party decided to revisit the town. Taking advantage of Christabel's carriage, they were spoiled by it. Their wet clothes were changed on the way. While talking about various things, they advanced under the warm sunlight with the horse's footsteps as the BGM. Together with a new companion, Hajime conquered the second dungeon. While laying down inside the wagon and watching the sun shining brilliantly, Hajime thought about what might happen on his journey from now on, and a smile floated on his face.